These nasty jobs pay more than your dream career. I have a friend who runs a septic service, drives around in a honey wagon to pump septic tanks. He also does repairs and installs of septic systems. He inherited the business from his dad. He has little competition and can charge whatever he wants. He'll also do emergency crappy service calls in the middle of the night, but won't get out of bed for less than $1,000. He has all of the work he needs and the phone is ringing constantly. This job is number 1 and also number 2. You beat me to it. Good pay, low stress, and as a garbage collector friend told me, it all washes off at the end of the day. Except for the Hep C and MRSA. That crap sticks with you. I met a guy that dove the nuclear reactor cooling ponds to look for leaks in the liner. He didn't work many days a year and he made the big money. And he doesn't need to use the headlights on his car when he drives home at night. Ironically, it probably has a lower than average chance of exposure to radiation compared to other jobs in a nuclear facility. First, the rods aren't going to be active, so the facility will always be at minimal radioactivity while you're working. And second, if there is a meltdown while you're there, the water will boil you to death before it stops shielding you from the radiation. I had a friend who works in the morgue at the largest hospital in our town. $100K, that's back then, I don't know what it is now. He says the largest drawbacks are A, smelling like preservatives, and B, dating is really difficult since most people assume you're a little bit messed up to do that for a living. The morticians I know are the friendliest, sweetest folks. One of them's gregarious, the other's a quiet type. They both say you've got to be calming and kind to do the job. Bedside manner for folks in some of the hardest times of their lives. You do have to be resilient though. Grief can make people real mean. You just got to shake it off and hold to that notion of what they're going through. A lot of handyman jobs in my experience. I just fixed my dryer vent today. It was pretty tedious and kind of frustrating. And with the way my laundry room is set up, it required some, shall we say, acrobatics of climbing over the dryer. If I was older or in worse shape or just not confident with a screwdriver, I'm sure I would have been paying someone at least 10 times what it cost to do it myself. I just chatted with a guy at the gym who started a dog do pickup business during COVID and is apparently doing very well. He owns a really nice house and several nice cars. I just can't fathom that there's that many people who don't want to pick up their own dog poop. Enough people to make him rich. I would absolutely pay someone $20 to clear out my kitty litter trays. Okay, these ones are the ones that surprise me the most. Like, I know it's gross, but pet poop is relatively quick and easy to clean up in the grand scope of things. How is there enough business for this one guy to make bank on? Or is he just particularly adept at money laundering? I had a plumber come over for clogged toilets. I was embarrassed because it was caused by a bunch of TP and flushable wipes in 2021. I was outside when he pulled out the largest block of number 2 and paper ever, and it smelled so bad. I told him after the smell went away and he was still pulling it out, looking like a hot, sweaty Florida crap. I'm so sorry for the smell. I'm revoking their wipe privileges. And he just smiled at me and said, "That's the smell of money. I don't care." And he went on his toothless way. Never forget, never want to flush things down again after seeing that come back up. Ugh. He's a joyous plumber, laughing and literally whistling probably a song of dumb people like me. Smells like money, he said. Plumber's apprentice here. Between training pay, commission, and his standard labor, my trainer comes out at around $105K last year. I've seen the W-2 myself. I'm here at $16 an hour until my 90-day probationary period is up. Wish I would have done this sooner in life. Death scene cleanup. It pays well, but one needs all of the PPA and a strong stomach. Several years ago, a loner guy with no family died in his house across the street. The pizza delivery guy went in to see what his regular was up to, and he'd been dead about a week. In the summer, with no AC. The entire house was trashed. A guy bought it at an estate sale, fixed it up and sold it. The deceased dude partly melted through the floor and into the crawl space. The death scene cleanup guys who went through there first told me the house insurance pays for the work. About $20K for a week's worth of tearing out and sanitizing. They had a couple of different dumpsters there, and like an idiot, I stuck my nose into one. Yikes. At least where I'm from, the sea. A Maritime chief engineer makes 15 times what the average person makes in Greece, and most of them work a few months per year and they're set. Say goodbye to family and friends, though. Sailing. The saying is that most of the pay is compensation for the lifestyle of being home half the time. I know so many guys that said they'd quit if they found something that paid even half as well. I stopped after like 10 years. I figured it'd be something productive and profitable in my 20s, but after that, you start looking for more life out of life. I mow lawns. I made my first million a couple of years ago. Been grossing over $100,000 for a few years now. Never advertised, no business card, no name on my trailer or pickup. Just word of mouth and quality work has grown my business to the point that I'm busy every day from April until mid-November. My first year was laughably bad. I only made about $8,000 gross. I was a laid-off electrician, so luckily I had some electrical jobs to fill in the gaps. I also worked part-time for an HVAC company. I busted my butt for 5 years or so and just kept growing my customer list. Now I only mow lawns and do basic sprinkler maintenance and the occasional tree trimming or hedge. But those side jobs are only for lawn customers and add up to less than 5% of my yearly income. Deep sea welders. That crap does mess you up though. You're lucky if you can still do it after 35. I have an employee that's qualified for deep water welding and did it for like 2 years. He worked long enough to pay for the school and got out. He said he was going to die underwater. Hourly, you can easily make $100 an hour being a stadium beer hawker. That work is brutal but kind of fun. I never made less than $1,500 on concert nights. Oil rigs. The people who work there are ruining their health and family life. Lots of people ruin their health and family lives for free. Compared to a 9 through 5 Monday through Friday construction job, I work 79 less days per year, and I make double the money so my wife can afford to take her boyfriend to Mexico when I'm away working. Had a buddy who was not great in school. Let's say it took creativity on lots of people's parts to get him over the finish line. Not dumb, but not great with classical educational goals. He went right into cleaning sewers. He went down into the sewers to clean out all the flushable wipes, knee-deep sometimes. He made $75,000 a year 3 years in, and the last time I talked to him he had $180K just managing the next generation of nugget diggers. In commercial construction, we work rain or shine no matter the temperature. I work HVAC and plumbing, but electrical or drywall or elevator, steel or welding, roofing or exterior are included in this statement. Physical labor leaves us absolutely drained some days, but the pay and perks are great. And I don't have to pay to have someone work on my home. Not many people want to physically and mentally work themselves to the bone almost every day, but some of us nut jobs actually like it. I make $100 scrubbing the hulls of boats in the water. Used gear was about $50 and I just started doing it one day. Mining. I did it for 2 years. Maybe I would have made it for 3 if it weren't for COVID effing everything up. Got stuck in outback Australia. It sucked. It's okay if you've got a plan and a goal in mind. You get in, you get upskilled, save your money and set yourself up. Problem is your mental health starts to tank and you start falling for vices. We're talking booze, substances, gambling, or buying toys just because you want something nice for your hard work. We're talking your jet skis and stuff. It's so easy to let lifestyle creep come in and keep you stuck with golden handcuffs. That and the food is plentiful, and with long hours and dessert, you can put on weight very quickly. Get into a routine, go to the gym, keep a goal in mind with a little flexibility of small rewards as you're getting there. And take advantage of any free things offered on the job, such as counselling services. They make a big difference, mate. I just saw a job in the mines that would double my pay. Super tempting, but I know my mental health isn't where it needs to be to go back there yet. The narrator kind of regrets he didn't do this in Australia, since he just did a bunch of hospitality that wrecked his mental health for no money anyway. If I'd done this, at least I'd have made way more money doing it. I think if you're a structured, rigid person and able to just computer game or something for 2 years, which I did through the pandemic anyway, this job might be a good option. Not for social butterflies, though. I'm not sure if it really counts, but for me the pay is decent and it exists because other people are lazy. UX research. Research where you watch and analyze customer behavior instead of going off common sense. You see, a lot of managers feel they're secretly powerfully intelligent leaders with unique insights, so they avoid doing it because it challenges their ego. A place with it built in is fine, that's not avoidance. I'm talking solely about the UX rescue teams that get built to save a product or company for this question. Here's some of the dumb choices we've had to stop stupid managers from taking. Oh, but hot chicks sell. All we need to do is put a hot POA on it. Nope. Customers love AI bots, and they're cheaper than a help desk. Nope. This'll be fine. I love a mysterious walk at night. 50% of your clients are women. Nope. I'm producing this as the paid disability solution for this venue. It needs stairs to reach it. Nope. All of X love Y, which is great because I'm not one of those X idiots, so I'll rip them off. They didn't love it, and you're a moron. We'll just commit fraud. The customers won't find out. No. My government solution for train fares has this gate design. That gate design crushes wheelchairs. No. And the worst one, which is always some variation of, I don't need to waste money on research, I know exactly how people will use this. No, bad entrepreneur. One person is not a decent sample. Anyways, we sometimes get assembled and panic paid to rescue a shareholder investment because somebody crushed someone because they forgot toddlers exist. On that topic, most XR headsets cause way more nausea and physical pain for women because, well, guess why? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Dog walking. Like most people don't want to take their own dog out, so they pay me way more than I expected to do it for them. Windmill and turbine maintenance workers, as well as most jobs that require a person to do regular outside work at great heights. I'm seeing a pattern with some of these jobs. The worse it smells or the more likely you'll need therapy afterwards, the better it pays. Exterminator. You're basically a paid hitman for roaches. Used to do commercial large-scale sandblasting. It's dirty work, but it pays great. Requires less skill compared to other jobs on the projects we've worked at. Poopsmith. Crime scene cleaner. You're literally scrubbing human tragedy off the walls. Huge pay, zero dinner party charm. Hear me out, divorce lawyers. It's high-paying because nobody else is willing to monetize misery full-time. The worst part in that job is the two adults separating and the kids that are left behind. Amicable separations are few and far between. It's the crap show that's more common. I know a guy who's part of that world. He's like an asset detective. He goes through the finances of each person in a divorce and digs up every last dime. Then he gives them an evaluation of what a fair split of assets looks like. He knows he does a good job when neither party is happy about his conclusions. I.e., being screamed at from both sides is a symptom of success. Fun. Water treatment plants pay very well. It's crappy work, but someone's gotta do it. Yep, I'm a network engineer supporting my city's clean water system. I thought I was doing good until I started talking to the plant engineers. Those guys are making good catch plus pensions. I got into the wrong industry. Air traffic control has to be in the top 5. It's a 6-figure job with amazing benefits, employed by the FAA, but the stress of having hundreds of lives in your hands on a daily basis is so overwhelming that most people can't do it. I gave it up after 5 years. Honestly, a lot of high-paying jobs exist because they're dirty, dangerous, or just mentally exhausting. Think commercial fishing, oil rig work, deep-sea welding, or handling hazardous waste. Most people avoid them, so companies have to pay a premium to get someone willing to do the work. Basically every high-paying job to some extent. While you could make an argument that intelligence is a limiting factor, there's a lot of really smart people in the world who choose not to have high-paying jobs because they don't want the stress that comes with them. That's my finance job. Sounds good to get into finance. Then you realize why you're there and what it takes. It's not an easy thing. Even if you're smart enough to succeed, you may not want to. I wish I was good at sales. Garbage picking services. I don't know about the rest of the other countries, however, in my country, people earn it in 3 ways. First, salary from their government job. Second, they charge $100 for picking door-to-door garbage from every house. And third, they sort and separate the scrappy items from the garbage and sell it to the local scrap shops. Scraping the guts of dead animals off the highways. I was offered that job in '77 for $50K a year. I'm not sure what it would pay now. Come to think of it, you had to clean up after the remains of self-deletions as well. I turned it down. $50K was insane money back in 1977 though. Another left-field answer? Honestly, a lot of corporate upper management jobs. The reason those jobs pay $300K plus, and sometimes well into the millions, is that they're absolutely awful jobs that suck every ounce of mental energy out of you and make your life generally miserable. You can't even enjoy the money. They make no sense unless you plan to write off 10 years of your life to misery and retire early. Yet lots of people get trapped into the corporate ladder climb. There's no amount of money you could even pay me to be a lawyer or investment banker. It's not even the stress and the hours. God knows I had jobs with similar hours and stress. It's the paperwork. I hate reading boring 200-page reports. I hate writing boring 200-page reports. I hate PowerPoints, and I hate arguing. I remember when I was a teenager thinking it was hilarious that a girl I didn't particularly like had a part-time job at the dump, until I learned she made twice what I did at my job at the pet store. Municipal waste has steady pay and even steadier customers. Man, working at the dump really is the kind of thing people would give you crap for in school, as you raked in money hand over fist that made any of their jobs look like crap. Ah, kids. So weirdly judgy. AG pilot, flying under 10 feet above the ground, going 140 miles per hour, avoiding power lines and trees, and also making sharp turns to spray chemicals on cheap crops. I would argue this one. There's a bunch of low-time pilots out there that are willing to do this job. No one's hiring though, as insurance will shoot through the roof for low-time pilots. Then they get high-time pilots because they're already sought out by airlines and all. Why do a high-risk job for half the pay? Drones are starting to replace this job as well, by the way. I'll tell you from my experience what isn't a high-paying job: picking up bodies for your local medical examiner's office. Obscure programming jobs in the financial sector. Had a family friend that retired from his job as a COBOL programmer that he'd been working since 1965. After a year or two of retirement, a different financial company came to him and said, "Name your salary and we'll hire you." So he requested something around $2 million a year. He was hired on the spot. High-level working girl. Plumbers are valuable, necessary, and appreciated deeply by me. We had a leak and a flange that needed replacing. We went from Friday night to Monday without a loo. I've never appreciated my toilet so much. They had to rent a jackhammer and do some bloody masonry to remove and reinstall the toilet after the repair. $2,750 for the whole Megillah. Proper IT. Most people want to do the least possible and then get the crap hacked out of their systems. And that's why I make mid-six figures. Lots of general home repairs and even light renovations. Either people don't want to try or they think they're more capable than they are. It's also hard to find people to do this. We're in the midst of a major renovation. It took me 2 years to find a suitable contractor. The main problem is most contractors who do home renos either want to redo your existing kitchen or bath, or they want to build you an entire home. There's really no in-between, at least in my area. Service plumbing. I don't mean butt-crack Billy Bob fixing your kitchen sink drain, but the actual repipe the whole house, fix your boiler, install the new water softener, science-based service plumber. Someone who actually knows code and knows how to do things correctly. I'm 25, I'll be a master plumber around 2 or 3 years from now. I had a paycheck this year. I pulled in over $9 grand in 2 weeks, post-tax, post 15% towards retirement, post-health insurance, as a first-year apprentice who got his own truck early. It's not for everyone. In fact, it's not for the vast majority of people. You have to have a ton of patience, be willing to contort your body in all the different ways in disgusting environments. But me and my wife are buying our first home in our 20s because of this, on just my income. Her income will come this December when she graduates and begins residency as an LPC. Sewer inspectors, funeral directors, pest control, and nuclear waste handlers. Dirty or dangerous work equals premium wages. Based on these answers, stuff to do with boats, stuff to do with death, stuff to do with duty, human or animal, and stuff to do with manual labor. Most healthcare fields that require a doctorate degree, like doctor or pharmacist, going through 8 or more years of higher education and attaining serious student loan debt just doesn't appeal to people, especially once they realize they're responsible for making potential life or death decisions for people. In addition, compassion fatigue is a real problem, and the reason why a lot of people end up transitioning out of healthcare entirely. I've seen a lot of screwery during my time working in healthcare, between management, co-workers who do not care, and patients dying. It's a pretty grim field to work in. The compassion fatigue is the reason why I'm not in a relationship, and I spend most of my time off from work sleeping. In my opinion, the stress isn't worth the money. I'd say this is untrue. There's many people who would like to be doctors. The pay is high because they only let in so many of them to med schools. Yeah, honestly, I feel that this is a job with no shortage of people who want to do it, even if it does meet the criteria of being a profession that plays hell with their mental health once they're in. So not too relevant to the question. I was interested to read it though. Pretty much any blue-collar union job, especially the ones that require working outside in the winter. Wastewater treatment plant management. My father-in-law makes twice my salary with half my education. Strangely, window cleaning. I can make up to $1 grand in like 2 to 3 hours in rich areas. Most higher-level management jobs. That crap sucks and it will eat away at your lifespan. Fortran developer. My dad has a friend from MIT who does Fortran and COBOL. He lives in Maui and big banks fly him in first class for various projects about half the year. Sometimes they have to wait for him. I don't know his exact compensation, but it's in the millions per year, and there's nobody else joining the ranks to replace him beyond the old guys who are already doing it. It is wild. I'm not sure if people wouldn't like doing it, but there's a company in my area that goes around cleaning your garbage bins. We have 4 cans and we pay about $55 per month to do it, and the service is great. The worker says he makes good money and does 8 to 10 hour shifts with weekends off, but he comes to my house on weekends and others for overtime. They just hook up the bin to a machine on the back of their truck and it makes them look brand new. Basically, a set it and forget it. The guy said it's a laid-back job. They wipe them down when done, and then he's on to the next house. It's a service I never thought I needed until I did. That way the bins don't stink like crap all the time. He said the only drawback is when the bin gets stuck and he has to unjam it, getting that nasty garbage juice all over him.
People who have surprisingly woken up admitted into hospital. What happened? I hopped into the back of a mate's pickup after a rugby game, went to sleep and woke up in ICU in traction with no feeling from my waist down. Turns out we had a head-on collision with a drunk driver and I went through the back of the cab picking up a host of broken body parts including 4 compressed vertebrae. A year and a number of surgeries later, I walked out of hospital an inch shorter and with enough metal in me to set off metal detectors at airports. I was the lucky one. The other 3 guys in the truck never woke up afterwards. 20 years and it still gets me. The accident happened in Zimbabwe, where I grew up. I've traveled a fair bit since then, but I'm now a bona fide Kiwi. I didn't find out about the others for a while. Aside from being zonked on pain meds, I don't think I was capable of understanding what had happened. Visitation was restricted in the ICU to my folks, but the day after I was moved out, most of the 2 senior teams and some of the staff pitched up to tell me the nasty truth. The tiny ward was crammed with big, burly, ugly guys crying their hearts out, and I loved every one of them for it. Not sure where I was going with this, but I've ended up here. Here's a thought from an old guy with a messed up body who walks with a constant limp, has tried every legal and many non-legal relief options for the daily thrum of pain, who has had 2 decades of survivor's guilt, and who knows firsthand the debris that is left behind when someone is tragically and unceremoniously yanked from life, their family, and their friends. If you're not 100% in control, don't put the key in the ignition. Don't put yourself in harm's way, and don't risk messing up someone else's life. Call a cab, take a bus, walk, but for Christ's sake, don't drive. I think he covered everything that I felt like saying about this topic. 18-year-old me got super wasted on Smirnoff watermelon vodka at some little club in Clearwater, Florida. Apparently, I fell off a bar stool and busted my head. When I woke up, I wasn't even sure what state I was in. I accidentally called my friend's mom in North Dakota trying to get a ride to somewhere other than the hospital. A decade later, and I still can't drink anything with that watermelon flavor. I get that feeling, not with artificial watermelon flavors. I love that in sweets, in drinks, whatever. I absolutely love it. The actual fruit watermelon, kind of mid, not gonna lie. But I can't drink sours with a Z. It's a drink. It's disgusting to me now. I was 12 in 1982, woke up in a hospital bed feeling fine, no idea what happened, nobody else in the room. Last person I remember hanging out with was my friend, Scott. So I call his house, his mom answered, advised me to call my parents. No answer at the home phone. So I'm sitting in this bed trying to figure out why I'm even here. I finally discover that the rolling table over the bed opens up and there's a mirror under the lid. Across my forehead and down the whole right side of my face are fresh abrasions. Oh. That's why. Finally, get a hold of Scott and learn the story, which I still don't remember. Was riding my bike down a sidewalk near the grade school. Sidewalk takes a 45-degree left turn and I cut the corner. Grass is deep and a little wet and my front wheel catches the edge of the sidewalk, flipping me over. I landed on my face, dragging against the other edge of the sidewalk, knocked out cold. Another neighborhood kid was in the area, hustled back to alert my parents. My dad took me to the hospital in his car and I woke up the next day. Yes, my parents just left me in the hospital by myself. Waking up in hospital on your own as a kid would absolutely suck. I mean, I remember being admitted to hospital for, I won't go into it, but, you know, it does suck. Hospitals just suck. Was at the pool. Next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital bed, feeling very cold and my throat hurts. Turns out I had actually drowned, but the lifeguard had pulled me out and reanimated me for about 45 minutes. Then I was flown to the hospital by helicopter where I lay in a coma for 2 days, during which they kept my body temperature low to prevent cerebral damage caused by lack of oxygen. I could go home a week after the accident. The way they described the lifeguard reanimating them, I'm picturing like a necromancer or something. My brother and I were outside playing with squirt guns. This was 2001, so I would have been 11. Next thing I know, it's Easter Sunday. I was in a hospital bed with a massive headache and blurred vision, and the last thing I remembered was 4 days ago. Apparently, I fell backwards and smacked my dome on the curb hard enough to fracture my skull and bruise my brain. Got 2 weeks off school, which was cool back then, and I've had to wear glasses ever since. Apparently, according to my mom, the first sign of consciousness in the hospital was me getting out of bed, taking a whiz on the floor, and then going back to sleep for 2 more days. The whole thing was a weird experience. Being in hospital in general, especially when you're freaking 11 years old or something and all alone, would suck. I understand why it would be a weird experience. I was running a half marathon with a friend and we had just passed the 10-mile mark, and I felt like I was getting into a groove after I struggled a bit the previous few miles. Woke up the next day in the ICU with my family all around me. Heat stroke plus rhabdomyolysis. I was admitted with a temperature of 108.6 and they were telling my family to prepare for the worst. I had to stay in hospital for a few days and then take it easy for a few months, but otherwise came out unscathed. Don't recommend it. Rhabdomyolysis, often called rhabdo, is a serious medical condition that can be fatal or result in permanent disability. Rhabdo occurs when damaged muscle tissues release its proteins and electrolytes into the blood. These substances can damage the heart and kidneys and cause permanent disability or even death. And that's what rhabdomyolysis is. Woke up in the hospital with my roommate and her mom asleep in the chairs in the room. I started freaking out because I was 7 months pregnant and my pregnant belly was obviously not pregnant. My screaming woke them up. My fiancé and I had been hit by a drunk driver, killing my fiancé, and I lost the baby. I had been in a coma for 3 days. I have some really gnarly scars that my kids like to make up crazy stories about. My favorite being the time I fought off 3 knife-wielding psychotic carnies and murdered them with my bare hands. Well, you know what? I'm glad there was a semblance of a happy ending for this lady. I was 16 and hit by a Ford F-350. I am a tiny human, I'm under 5 foot, and this truck hit me going 40 miles per hour when I was in the crosswalk. The hit launched me across the entire intersection. I don't remember anything 20 minutes before until 10 days later. When I finally woke up, I had been in a coma for 5 days. Both my lungs had collapsed, I had 3 blood transfusions, a chest tube to drain the internal bleeding, 3 surgeries, and the whole left side of my body broken. I couldn't walk and my vision and memory had been damaged. It's been 6 years and I'm doing great now. You wouldn't even know anything happened to me except I have memory issues and arthritis. But I like to think I came out on top in this situation. I think they did as well. I was at a party with a friend in some college town. The street we were on had these 3-story apartments built side by side. The whole street was partying, even on the roofs. We got separated and it was time to go. We don't live in that town. Anyways, I see an ambulance going down the street and I knew it was for my idiot roommate. So I followed the ambulance and sure enough, he was laying on the ground barely conscious. He tried to jump from one building to the next and didn't even come close. Luckily for him, his head broke the fall. A few weeks later, he finally asked, "Oh yeah, hey man, that night we went to Lawrence and I woke up in hospital. What happened?" Yes, it was Lawrence, Kansas. I don't know the street. It was 2001 or 2002. Yes, he did have a concussion. He was fully unconscious for a couple minutes and everybody thought he was dead. They said he was laying there with his eyes open, unresponsive. It wasn't until someone dumped a bottle of water on him that he was roused into a semi-conscious state. Other than having chronic headaches for a month, he was fine. Glad everything worked out, but what a stupid prick. Woke up in the hospital, too weak to press a PCA pump, being told I'd been in a catastrophic motorcycle accident. Had suffered extensive injuries to my entire, except my left arm, spine, and head, thank the universe, body, and had been in a medically induced coma for 5 weeks. I lost any memory of the event or the week prior to it. I was hit by some unrepentant doucheburgers who were out on parole, repeat offenders, and decided it would be a great idea to assault a 7-Eleven clerk, rob the store, and lead the police in a 30-minute chase at excess speeds up to 100 plus. Their joyride ended when they went the wrong way on the freeway and took my on-ramp going 70 miles per hour against the traffic and slammed into me at a net speed of 120 miles per hour. I was going 50. We know all this from the police report. I never had a chance since the on-ramp sloped up, then back down to enter the freeway, and I hit these guys at the crest of the hill. Never saw them. The impact sliced through their engine block, so they ran on foot after that. The police recorded their statements after being followed by helicopter and being apprehended as, "What you arresting me for?" They got 9 and 5 years in a plea deal, and I was notified when they were each let out after serving less than half the sentence. Please note they were 100% sober, knew they hit me, and they left me to die. I'm a generally compassionate person, or at least I try to be, but I hope their lives are a living hell and that they live a long time. I hope they never get the chance to hurt someone again, but I fully expect that that's what they've done. For my own mental health, I'll never try to find out what's become of them. This was over 10 years ago and I have a good life now. Loving GF, a mortgage, a super smart border collie, everything I ever wanted. Although it's been a serious struggle. I didn't get any money except for $50,000 from the Victims of Violent Crimes Fund, plus, remarkably, their auto insurance. My medical bills were $3 million plus, but I was insured, thankfully, since I just started the job 6 months prior. I used that money in my hospital/recovery time to get my MBA and have worked hard as hell to move up in my new career since I knew I had to change. I'm not very agile anymore. I'm still severely and permanently disabled. I'll never run again, nor have any real balance. I need a cane and lost the use of my dominant arm. But I'm lucky since I still have my faculties and look relatively normal. I don't own a motorcycle anymore and will never attempt to ride again. You need 100% of your physical faculties as well as mental to do it safely. I don't blame my motorcycle at all. I miss riding and probably wouldn't have fared much better in those speeds in a car. If you ride and are reading this, please make sure you buy the best safety gear and wear it every time. I'm only here today because I did, and no amount of skill would have saved me from being in the exact wrong place at the exact wrong time. I was wearing a Nolan flip-face helmet, $300 at the time. Thank you, Nolan, for your outstanding quality and commitment to safety. I still have the helmet, and it's scratched and cracked all the way through. That could have been my skull. I agree with your sentiment. Screw those guys, but I do believe you would have fared a lot better in a car. Wife, 2-year-old son, and myself went to visit a couple of friends out in the country. Had some food, had a couple of drinks myself, had an amazing time. Wife was sober. I was wrangling my young one back into his car seat to go home. He was so overtired and unhappy, but I made sure he was good and snug, and pulled out of the driveway after waving goodbye to our friends. I came to almost a month and a half later. I could barely move my legs and arms due to the neuropathy and fatigue. I had a feeding tube up my nose and a colostomy bag. The doctors told me that I had actually come to a couple days before while I was still in intensive care, but the nature of the anesthetic they had me on meant I kept kinda waking up, fading back, and forgetting everything. At this point, I was able to remember things normally. They told me right off the bat my son was fine, completely unharmed and in the care of a very old and dear friend with 3 kids of his own already. My wife was alive and relatively uninjured with the exception of some damage to her leg and a moderate brain injury that she would recover from slowly. They kept the details about the accident from me for a few weeks while I was recovering, but basically my wife missed a stop sign in the middle of a dark, poorly marked country road and we got T-boned by an SUV. Other driver was fine. It's been over 2 years since the accident. I got the strength back to walk again, but because of pins, bolts, plates in my left ankle and shin, I'll never likely be able to run again. The neuropathy in my legs wore off and eventually wore off in my arms to the point where I can use them normally again, but it was a lot of therapy retraining them. Suffered PTSD about 10 months after by the time I was back at home. From time to time, I still have nightmares about something that I don't technically have the ability to remember. That is just downright scary. Smash cut to a month and a half later and you don't remember anything, but you're getting PTSD-driven nightmares about it? Not me, but my girlfriend's sister jumped out of a window Tuesday morning. She's schizophrenic, so there's other issues there besides just trying to self-delete. She's still sedated and hasn't woke up. Broken vertebrae in neck and lower back, but they don't think she's paralyzed. Slight bleeding on the brain that they're relatively sure didn't cause damage. Busted ribs and torn up lungs they had to remove part of yesterday in surgery. Some other broken bones, etc. They have her sedated/unconscious to prevent her from moving due to the broken vertebrae. I wonder if she'll be disappointed when she wakes up later in the week. On the plus side, her parents are having a Cambodian guy come in to do an exorcism, so that's going to fix everything. Love her, but her parents are something else. Old school Vietnamese. Maybe this is just me, but I imagine she was exceedingly disappointed when she woke up. Snowshoeing, and by snowshoeing I mean a short, slow trip on a relatively flat, groomed trail because I in no way represent an athlete. Finished the trip and am standing on the edge of a parking lot looking over Lake Tahoe from Echo Summit. Next to me, 2 guys are filming some sort of ski ad, I assume. One guy skis down the cliff, hits a mogul, does a somersault, and then somehow stops to climb back up and repeat. Guy 2 is filming. Skier guys may be covering about a football field distance over and over again. again. It's a cliff and he acts about like he's getting up during an ad to get a soda from the TV. Ski, mogul, flip, stop, up, repeat. I enjoy the view and muse on the comparison between my pathetic activity and this guy's and think, okay, time to go. I immediately fall on the ground and can hear my wrist snap as it's caught in the strap on my ski pole. Get up, walk painfully back to my car, a quarter mile, curse all the families driving erratically and allowing their children to careen around the snow play park. I'm a little grumpy with the pain, then realize I can't get my keys out of my pants pocket. Ask a woman who looks like a mum to help. She steps into that extremely uncomfortable, intimate distance and reaches her hand deep into my disgusting pocket and fishes out my keys. It was very awkward. I thank her profusely and to this day will bless her and wish that she and her descendants may people the earth. Drive to Barton Hospital for a temporary cast, drive home. It's not easy driving with one arm and it's no doubt illegal, but I made it. I have another equally exciting story about a broken and dislocated shoulder from a bike ride. Doesn't exactly fit the criteria of this topic, but it was a nice shake-up, I suppose. I remember parts where the paramedics were taking me to the hospital in the ambulance, asking me about a 666 tattoo I had and something about how one of their sisters also attempted self-deletion. But I lost consciousness again before I could say I didn't remember even thinking about self-deletion. I woke up in the hospital and apparently I drank way too much and my dad found me unconscious. Everyone thought I tried to delete myself because I was alone, so it took a while before they just let me go without being taken to a psych ward. I was actually pretty depressed, and now I wonder if I was trying to die. I just feel bad about apparently throwing up on my cat before anyone found me. My dad said she was meowing next to me until someone came home. Not gonna lie, I almost lost it when they mentioned that they threw up on their cat. But I also have to commend that cat for its level of loyalty. TLDR, woke up from a coma with fungal pneumonia, spent about 76 days in CCU, had left lung removed. I might have a story that fits in here. Happened about 3.5 years ago. I'd been kind of sick with the flu for a few weeks. Couldn't seem to shake it. I'd get a little better, then a bit worse. This was right before Christmas 2012. That year, Christmas Eve and Christmas was on a Monday and Tuesday. So I was just pushing myself to get to that sweet 4-day weekend, thinking I'd just relax and that'd get me past it. So I rested hard all weekend, wasn't eating much, just stayed in the easy chair. The day after Christmas, I still wasn't feeling up for work. I was still at my folks' house for the holiday, so my mom being my mom was all, if you're too sick to work, you're going to the doctor. I didn't have insurance at the time, so I hadn't been. Went to one of those urgent care places instead. I was there for a little while, don't remember much around this point. I remember we left after a while, then waking up in CCU about 12 to 14 days later. Turns out I have the beats. Now, I hear from a lot of people that this is how they find out they are diabetic, either very low blood sugar or you go into DKA and get flu/pneumonia. This is where my story takes a house-like turn. Most of the following info I got secondhand after the fact. When leaving the urgent care place, apparently my mother had been told to take me straight to the ER. She got me to the closest one and they took me right in. Didn't even wait on the paperwork. They knew right away about the DKA and pneumonia, but something else was wrong. They did MRIs, ran blood tests, checked for strokes, heart attack, about everything. Something was still off and they didn't know what. I went into respiratory failure that evening and they had to put me in a coma and on life support. They sent the blood to the labs. Now, in-house, they get results back in a few hours and try something else, then run another test and try something else. I'm not sure how accurate that is for most situations. In my case, they had determined there was an abnormal kind of infection in or in addition to the pneumonia. The culture had to grow for 10 days for them to see what was in my blood to make a solid diagnosis. So the data came back and the infectious disease doctors working on me spent several days poring over everything she could find to learn what it was. She found a picture in an old textbook of a fungus called rhizopus. Once they figured this out, they were able to find a medicine that could treat it, though it'd be a 13-week course of intravenous treatment and it was highly toxic just for kicks. So they pulled me off the sedation after 10 days and it took me a few days to wake up. Apparently, they told my folks to start planning my funeral, so that's creepy. When I woke up, they started the treatments the next day. I wasn't out of the woods yet though. After I woke, the pulmonary doctor did a brachioscope to see my lungs. She said they looked like they were full of pink fluff, like cotton candy or pink marshmallow fluff. That was on Wednesday, January 9th, 2013. She did another scope that Friday and said it looked less inflamed, so that was great news. And she said she'd do another on Monday. The weekend passes. She comes back and runs another. This time, when she put the tube in, apparently a sweet odor was released immediately. My mom says she said, "Do you smell that? Something smells sweet." My right lung looked even better. My left lung, well, she said looked black and green and spiky, so that's a bad thing, I guess. The lung had begun to die. This is a part I remember for myself really clearly. I woke up from that procedure and the nurse told me to wait a moment and left the room. She came back with the pulmonary doctor, a surgeon, and my mom and dad. Oh gee, Mom and Dad have been crying but are smiling through it. That's not a good sign. The surgeon explained what they found and said we pretty much have two choices. We can do surgery and remove your left lung, and you have about a 50-50 chance of surviving, or we can keep you on the medicine and do everything else we can for you. Now, even being all doped up and half asleep, I knew that meant praying for a miracle and making me comfortable while I died. Now, I'm a Christian. I have faith in miracles and such, but I also believe one of the greatest things we have as a species is a brilliant and curious mind that has led to such things as music, art, bacon, and medicine. So I'd be a fool, in my opinion, to ignore the advice and help of the fine doctors and nurses in front of me. And to be honest, I remember thinking to myself in that moment, I've never had a major surgery. It'll be interesting if I come through. So I wrote surgery on the little marker board I had since I couldn't speak. I had surgery the next morning where they removed my full left lung. Afterwards, I remained in CCU for a total of 76 days, 99 days total in the hospital. I still had to run the full 13-week course of that medicine. I had a lot of rehab and therapy for months after. A lot of it dealing with the extensive muscle atrophy in my legs and arms and pretty much everywhere. 3 years later, I've much improved. I lost a bit of mobility in my feet, both from the atrophy and the diabetic neuropathy. My stamina isn't what it was, obviously, as my oxygen capacity is about 55% of what it was, we think. At rest, I still can hit about 95 to 97% blood saturation, which is normal. At moderate to heavy activity, it drops pretty fast. Still working on improving that. Got a good job, got a girl. Overall, things are actually a lot better than it was before. Nothing like almost dying to spice up your life. I feel like I emphasized the fine doctors and nurses a bit too much. It made it sound like they're all kinda sexy. Like everyone else on here, I'm glad things mostly worked out and there was no loss of human life in these. I can only imagine what it would be like to just wake up and it's like, oh damn, like what happened to me? It'd be very interesting, of course, but it'd be scary as hell. Actually, on that note, I do remember being in hospital, going under anesthetic, and then waking up like 2 days later or something. Of course, in comparison to a lot of people on here, that is absolutely nothing. Law enforcers, have you ever come across a crime so stupid or ridiculous that you just let it slip? Not the US, to clarify for everyone asking. This was in South Africa in the early 90s. When I was in high school, the rugby team found out I had learned how to drive but not yet received my license. They all knew I did not drink, so one of them had the genius idea of inviting me to parties as the designated driver. We'd lost a popular kid to a drunken accident a few months earlier, so it was actually a good idea. It was a great arrangement, lots of parties, lots of girls, and all I had to do was get them home in one piece afterwards. It went great for a few weeks, until one night. The police had heard there was a big party on a farm outside of town and decided to set up a roadblock. So I come driving up to flashing lights, car filled with 5 big drunk guys, including one passed out with his head out of the window, and little scrawny me barely able to look over the steering wheel, and the inside of the car smells like a brewery. The officer takes one look at the car and asks me to step out. Have you been drinking? No, officer, I don't drink. Has me take a breathalyzer. 0. Looks at me. Can I see your driver's license? Sorry, officer, I don't have one yet. I'm getting it next week. And I point back toward the car, but they have theirs. He looked at me, flipped his little book closed and said, just take them home. Next time I see you, you'd better have your license. Under the circumstances, this sounds like a pretty reasonable officer. Like, better the guy who's gonna get his license next week and sober be driving now than one of these guys be trying to. I overheard this one last night as I was sitting near 2 Indiana cops at Panda Express. So this lady lady had a warrant for an unpaid ticket and missed court date. I bring her in and it turns out that her address is wrong and she never got the court summons. The original ticket was for possession of a black bass under 14 inches, and since she admits the court summons, it was now on her record. So if she goes to apply for a job and they inevitably ask her, do you have any criminal history, she's obligated to say yes. Now imagine if the employer asks, why? Because I caught a small fish. Maybe I'm dumb, but I am confused.
I was at a convenience store buying beer while two cops were milling around looking at soft drinks and snacks. One employee was working the register while another one was throwing out old donuts. One of the cops looked over at her and said,
You can't do that in front of the police.
It was funny because he sounded upset with her when he said it.
Always nice when people have a good sense of humor.
My ex-fiancé was a cop for a redneck town where the people didn't have much money. He was called to the grocery store where a little girl about 9 was being detained in the manager's office for stealing a box of tampons. He said she had tears and snot everywhere and her pants had obvious bloodstains all over the front. My ex then bought the box she was trying to steal along with 3 more boxes, some food and milk. He then drove her home to a trailer that was falling apart. It wasn't so much the crime that was ridiculous, but more the manager's reaction. I guess when my ex came in, the manager was just screaming at this terrified 9-year-old.
That's a nice story, a fine story, a good story. But my question is, what did you do to drive away such a good man? A kid, of course, I don't know the ins and outs of their relationship. I frequently, or did when I was in uniform, let impaired care or control slide. If I found someone sleeping in the back seat of their parked car after drinking, it demonstrated to me a decision to not drink and drive. I'd often take keys or drive someone home, but arresting them just seemed wrong. Long as they're not obstructing traffic or in a really inconvenient place, I think that makes perfect sense. I was the lucky one once, not charged by a cop. In college, my friend had a massive house party. I woke up the next morning face down in a puddle of drool in the bed of my truck. Went inside and found out the cops had busted the party and everyone got underage tickets. Over 30 people, except for me. Not sure if they took pity on me or never saw me, but they had my truck boxed in with squad cars. The lines on my face from the rubs on my bedliner took 2 days to go away.
Well, aren't you a lucky boy?
Not a police officer, but I witnessed it happen. I got a phone call from a police officer using my buddy's phone. Apparently, my buddy, a jackass, got so drunk he fell out of his car in the drive-thru lane at Taco Cabana. The cop told me I had 15 minutes to get there and pick up my friend. I made it in time and the officer helped me throw my friend in the bed of my truck. He told me to take my friend home and when he woke up, tell him he was a goddamn idiot. The police officer was a homicide detective in the major city in which we lived, and he said he had real crimes to solve and to stop wasting his time.
You better take your drunk little jackass friend home. I got donuts to eat, coffee to drink, and murders to solve.
A long time ago in a life far removed from my own, I had a nasty dope addiction. I cleaned up my life and had been clean for 3 years. My friend had been learning to become a tattoo artist and asked me if I wanted one. To repay his kindness, I picked up a 30-pack and some tequila. After about 3 hours of him digging in with the gun and most of the beers and booze gone, we came up with the plan. We were going to go to the city and score some dope. Didn't take long and we accomplished just that. We found a nice, quiet, dimly lit parking lot to pull in and get to getting high. We break out the gear and started. He got his ready faster and got it done. I was out of practice and fumbled around a bit. Just then, someone knocked on the window. It's the cops. We rolled down the window and they asked if we knew where we were. Before we can say anything, the cop said, "This is the fucking police station parking lot. Are you frickin' thick?" They took the dope and sent us on our way, and I now have 13 years clean thanks to that cop. You know, in times like that, I can't help but think that well, if you're that stupid or just unaware of your environment, then yeah, you deserve to be arrested. But in this case, I guess things worked out. There was this guy where I used to live who would walk around smiling strangely and approach people trying to shake their hand. As soon as he got a hold of their hand, he would try to kiss them. A friend of mine naively accepted his handshake and literally bent over backward trying to avoid the kiss. A couple of churches in the area had this thing at the end of their service where everyone would shake hands so this guy would show up to reap the harvest. Cops were called on him a few times, but to my knowledge, they never arrested him, but just drove him far away from the area and dropped him off and made him walk all the way back. I'm just picturing that interaction as, "Oh, well, nice to make your acquaintance, old chap. What are you doing?" Brother-in-law is a cop. We'll call him Jack. He used to ride a bike in downtown Toronto during his first 2 years. Canadian cops ride in bikes and wear tight shorts during summer, by the way. So he was on a side street when he spotted a car driving like 10 kilometers an hour and every 5 seconds stopping suddenly like someone hitting their brakes hard and starting again. So he follows the car going around in a 4-block circle wondering what the hell? He decided to check if maybe something is wrong with the driver and needed help. He gets close to the car and he hears the driver, which was male, groaning. He immediately thought the driver was having a health issue. He rides up to the driver's window and puts his hand on the car and at the same time asking, "Sir, are you all right?" Driver slams his brakes and Jack sees a female lifting her head off his lap and hastily, the driver covering his crotch. He tried so hard not to burst out laughing. Driver was so embarrassed when Jack asked for license and registration. He said it was also obvious the woman wasn't a hooker because of her looks and the red face of shame. So the driver croaks up "Is there something wrong, officer?" while my brother Jack was looking at his license. Jack told the driver that he was driving too slow and he seemed to be in distress and next time he would be better off trying not to have engaged in a sexual manner while behind the wheel. He said all that in a very stern voice while looking at the guy straight in the eyes. He didn't give him a ticket or arrest him. When he returned back to the police station, he relayed the whole story to his buddies. They call him Spoilsport Jack now. It might sound a bit juvenile to say, but I love earning nicknames in the workplace. My time to shine. Now, I was the lawbreaker in this case, but the cop was so utterly dumbfounded and amused that he just let us go. Let me tell you the story of the 12-person Prius. It was around 10 p.m. on a Friday night and was my first day in college. It was freshman orientation day during the summer, and we got to stay in a dorm for the night. While my group was getting to know each other, we decided that we should find something fun to do. However, being in a small town, our options were limited. Thus, we decided upon visiting the glorious Walmart in town, about the most fun place to go. Our plans were thwarted though when we discovered that we were all dropped off by our parents and didn't have a car. We sure as hell weren't going to walk 8 miles and we didn't know what to do. But then, the twins piped up. The identical twin sisters apparently didn't come with their parents and instead borrowed their parents' Toyota Prius for the weekend. Great! So, with a car ready to go, we start for the parking lot, but then somebody did a head count and mentioned to the group that we have 12 people. Our hearts sank. How could we bring 12 people to Walmart with a Prius? One person suggested taking 2 trips. One person said, maybe we shouldn't go. But then, somebody suggested that we all squeeze in. It was brilliant. And after thinking about it, 100% feasible. So we got to work. 2 people in the passenger seat, 1 driving, 7 in the rear seat, and 2 in the trunk. It was a masterpiece. Thus, the journey began. Nearly touching the ground and easily bottoming out the suspension, we set forth for Walmart. We got about half a mile from campus before we were pulled over. The cop was speechless as he counted as each person exited the car. Sergeant Casper, his name was. Casper was the friendly cop. He could barely contain his laughter. He simply told us that he didn't want us getting hurt, that we should walk back to campus, and that he was impressed that we fit that many people in the car. We sat there and chatted for about 20 minutes and left, never to fit in the Prius again. Casper, the friendly cop, the friendliest cop you know. My wife got pulled over one night while I was riding in the passenger seat. She was driving my car and it didn't have automatic headlights and she forgot to flip the switch. The cop walks up and gets both our licenses, checks them and walks back. He issues my wife a warning, then gives me a ticket for presenting an expired license to an officer. He tells me it's the same as presenting a fictitious license to an LEO, and it's a $250 fine. I was confused because I had just renewed my license a year earlier, but before I could ask, he had ran back to his cruiser and drove off. Sure enough, he wrote down my license issue date as the expiration date. So I go to court to fight it, take a day off work, wait around at the courthouse for 3 hours. Finally, my case gets cancelled and I talk to an AITA. He says if my license is current now, then I'm off with just court costs. I explain the mistake the officer made. His eyes glaze over and says, if we go to the judge, it's gonna be the full line. I explain again and he says, fine, we will go to the judge. Another hour later, the judge calls the case and I explain it again. He asks to see the citation and the ticket. I present them. He looks at it and his face kind of squishes up in a what the hell look. His exact words were, who is the dumb butt cop wasting my time? Charges dismissed. For those who don't know, I say for those who don't know, the actual quote from the judge are words that I am not at liberty to say. I once got pulled over for speeding 15 over. I had just gotten Taco Bell, and when he asked me why I was going so fast, I said that I'm just really excited to eat my Taco Bell. He laughed, gave me my license back, and let me go, saying that was the funniest excuse he had heard all day. I think that's as valid a reason as any to let someone go on a speeding ticket. I was on foot patrol in central London about 2 in the morning. I turned a corner and saw a group of very drunk ex-public, privately schooled for you colonials, schoolboys staggering along the road with a collection of the usual ubiquitous parking cones. They had about 10 cones between the 5 of them. I stood there for about 5 minutes, walking this lot sodding about, when one of them spotted me. He then made an attempt to warn his friends that he had spotted me, but they were so drunk they didn't take any notice. He then gathered as many cones off of his friends that he could carry, staggered up to me and said, "Officer, I would like to hand these over to you as I think they are lost property." I burst out laughing and walked away. Typical, such a typical drunk juvenile act to do in England. I was young and went out to buy some condoms at a store. I spent a long time standing there trying to figure out what to get. Finally grab a box, then wander around the store working up the nerve to actually purchase it. I chicken out, put them on some random shelf, then go walk out of the store. As I get to the door, some lady in her 40s comes running up to me and in a slightly out-of-breath voice demands I hand over the condoms. I'm shocked and answer, wide-eyed, that I don't have them. She doesn't believe me, so I sheepishly lead her to where I ditched them. As I leave, again, I realized just buying them would have been a lot less stressful. My advice for buying condoms is just slam the pack down and do not break eye contact no matter what. They'll respect you because you're practicing safe sex. I was hammered one day walking home with a bunch of my friends. I see a trash can and running dropkick it. Of course, it sends trash everywhere, and all I hear on a PA is, "Pick it up." Cop there the whole time, never got out of the car. I picked up the trash can and put all the trash back and went on my way. Cool cop. Give a hoot, don't pollute. When I was in high school, my buddy and I left during lunch to go get our biology cat that he'd left at home. A biology cat is one that's being dissected. It was all splayed out and opened up on a dissection tray, essentially a baking sheet filled with wax so you could stick pins in it. We took off in another friend's car, a Beetle with no muffler and flat tires, and screaming to Mac's house about a mile away in a little lower middle-class neighborhood. Got the cat, put it on the back seat, and threw a dish towel over it because, well, it's just creepy. As I'm backing out the driveway, Mac tells me to be cool. There's a cop down at the intersection. We putter down the street and stop at the stop sign, and suddenly we're surrounded. Plainclothes cops come up and block us behind. 2 standard cop cars come from each side of the intersection and block us in front. A cop gets out and yells at us to turn off the car and step out. We're freaked because we know that the car has all kinds of illegal substances hidden away in the glove box behind the dash, under the seat. We also have no idea why driving fast and loud in this neighborhood warranted such a massive response. We get out, hands on the hood. Officer starts to search the car. We tell him about the biology cat and point to the back seat. He lifts the dish towel up, looks at us, and stops searching the car. Everyone backs off and he tells us to get back to school, and if I wasn't busy right now, I'd haul you in for speeding in a residential neighborhood. Get your muffler fixed. After school, we found out that someone had been murdered in the neighborhood earlier that morning. 2 male suspects seen leaving the area. Our biology teacher laughed his butt off. Never so grateful for a murder in my life. I understand the relief, but I certainly wouldn't say it like that. Not a cop, but I was driving to North Carolina. It was supposed to be my brother and I driving, but he went out the night previous and got hammered, thinking I'd drive the first leg, then he'd finish it out. Well, he miscalculated how hungover he was and was useless the entire way. This was a 12-hour drive, but when we finally got there, my brother starts complaining at me. He needs to use the bathroom. We were in the city at this point during rush hour, so I was stuck in the left lane among a great deal of traffic. There was a left turn that could get me to a Wendy's, so I jumped into the lane. The green turn arrow became yellow, so I started slowing down. My parents and brother all scream some variation of, "Just frickin' go!" So I do it, and sure enough, I see the lights go on, pull into the Wendy's parking lot and turn off the car. A large woman gets out of a cop car. I swear she is straight from a buddy cop movie as the loud-mouthed comic relief, permed hair and all. She walks up and looks totally serious. My brother is in the backseat, hungover, pale and sweating. He leans forward and blurts out, "Can I please go inside while you do this? I'm about to poo my pants." Her serious tone just completely drops and she starts laughing her butt off. "Of course, honey, you can go." He jumps out and runs into the building doing the funniest butt clench I've ever seen. She ends up giving me a warning because she saw me hit the brakes, then heard everyone screaming at me. She warned everyone to not distract the driver and told me to ignore everyone else, which I know I should have done. So everything worked out well, and my brother ends up coming out with Frosties for the family because they wouldn't let him use the bathroom without buying anything. I would have just immediately forgiven them once they brought me the the Frosty. If it's ice cream, a ice lolly, a slush puppy of some kind, if it's a frozen treat and you're trying to curry favor with me, well, you've got it, baby, you've got it. When I was in college, I woke up one morning to knocking on my door. I sleep naked, so just grabbed what was on my floor. It was a tank top and a frilly pink skirt. I opened the door to see a cop. At this point, I am experiencing the absolute worst hangover in the world and very possibly still partially drunk. He tells me that the landlord is paving the back parking lot and I need to move my car. I look at him and tell him there is no way I can drive it this time and say if they need to move it, they might want to do it themselves. Meanwhile, he is clearly holding back some laughter. He agrees to move my car for me and bring back my keys. I told him to wait a minute while I get them. Still trying to contain his laughter, he says, "Ma'am, they were actually in your door. I'm completely mortified and feel like death now." He returns 5 to 10 minutes later and tells me he moved it to the other section of the lot. I go back to sleep and a few hours later leave to go to class. Well, the car is absolutely nowhere in sight. I find a cop car parked not too far away and tell him what happened. He called in to the cop and it turns out the landlord had it towed. The first cop shows back up, apologizes, and offers to take me to the tow lot to get the car. On the way there, he decides to show off a little and is speeding through red lights and across town. It was pretty thrilling. The PD ended up paying for my towing fee. I mentioned the pink skirt because while we were on our way to the tow yard, he told me that he was holding back his laughter because the last thing he expected to see was a hungover girl wearing a tutu at 8 a.m. Apparently, that's what it looked like to him. And after seeing the keys in the door and what I had on, he envisioned the hangover type evening for me. This does not really fit the question of the post, but there are a lot of stories here of good guy cops helping out idiots in need and thought it was in a way relevant. I mean, that's precisely why I've been enjoying these stories quite a lot. I once woke up at the back door of a Chicago home, inside their 8-foot fenced and secured yard. I was awoken by 8 cops yelling at me and shining their lights on me, telling me to exit the yard and come to them. There was no way to get out of the yard and the homeowner had to come take a lock off the gate to let me out. I was asked where my shoes were, where I lived, how I got there, and what the hell was going on. I explained I went to bed on my friend's couch around 10. Inside my pockets, they found a giant glass pipe and an even bigger piece of devil's lettuce cola bud. After some serious what the hell looks and giggles from the greatest cops in the world, I found myself being given a ride 2 blocks away to my friend's house. I apologized for being a sleepwalking idiot and for the illegal substances, which I then realized was still in my pocket thanks to some pretty awesome Chicago cops. They do sound like some pretty understanding and cool cops. But for real, how the hell did you sleepwalk 2 blocks away? I mean, the most I've ever seen someone sleepwalk is like 5 feet and then pee on a television set.
When I was 18, I got pulled over. Policeman asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I say, "Yes, because I did an illegal U-turn." He says, "No, because you ran a stop sign." He was so amused by my stupidity that he let me go.
Some of these policemen sound extremely easy to please. My friends and I were driving home one Saturday night and spotted a car that looked like it had veered off the main drag and up against a building. We approached the car and tried to see if the driver was okay, but he was unresponsive, so we called 911 and the police showed up. They roused him and started asking him questions such as, did he have ID? No. What was his name? He didn't know. What was his address? He wasn't sure. The more he talked, the dumber and more stoned he sounded. They asked him if he lived in Portland, the city where this was occurring. He replied, "Portland?" Like he had never heard of the place. They then asked if he was from Beaverton, Vancouver, Gresham, Oregon City, Hillsborough, etc. Each time he responded as if he never heard of any of the cities mentioned. The cops paused as if they had run out of questions to ask, so I thought I might be able to help. I asked the driver if he lived in Oregon. He stonily replied, "Where's that?" I informed him it was on the west coast of the USA between Washington and California. He asked, "USA? What's that?" I replied that it's the main country in North America. "North America?" he says with more confusion. "Yes," I tell him. "North America is one of the continents of planet Earth. Are you familiar with planet Earth?" At this point, both officers are giggling and no longer asking any questions, deferring to my interrogation. The driver looked up in the sky for a few seconds, then returned his glassy gaze to me. "Earth?" he asked. I replied that Earth is the 3rd planet in this planetary system around the star called Sol. "Where's that?" he wanted to know. I replied that Sol was located in the spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy. Perhaps he was from somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy. That did not seem to ring a bell with him. I asked, "What about the Andromeda galaxy? Might you be from there?" He got a bit excited and indicated that the Andromeda galaxy sounded quite familiar. I turned to the officers and informed them, "He's from the Andromeda galaxy." They were laughing to the point where there were tears streaming from their eyes. days. I turned back to the driver and asked, "Are you here for the weekend or just passing through?" He hadn't decided yet. I was very interested in how he was able to get his VW bug from galaxy to galaxy, but he wasn't willing or able to share that technology with me. A shame. The police officers give him a ride back to the local detox center where I'm sure he was able to meet some fellow traveler and share good times. Whatever that boy was smoking, it pretty near gave him amnesia. That is crazy. Doesn't even know what galaxy he's from. What stories do you rarely tell because nobody will believe you? I'm a living witness to something known as the McMasterville explosion. CIL, the paint company, made explosives. Their explosives factory, which was a giant factory on the same grounds as the paint-making factory. One night, the whole thing blew up. I was looking right at it when it went. Not just the explosives, but thousands of gallons of flammable liquids from other parts of the factory all went up at once. It was estimated to have the power of a 1 kiloton explosion. I lived on the side of a mountain called Mount St. Hilaire, a little over a mile away looking down at the factory site. When you see an explosion like that from a distance, the land ripples like water, like when you drop a stone in water. I was riding a bike. The ground shook me first, then the air blast knocked me on my butt. The factory was deliberately sunk into the ground and surrounded by a high trench wall in case it ever blew up so the nearby town of Beloil wouldn't get leveled. So the explosive force got punched into the ground and the factory was blown straight up into the air. Tons of wreckage rained down for miles. No one I know of was hit by anything, but many small fires were started all over the place. My next-door neighbor found a train wheel in his backyard, and it was red hot when he found it. Apparently, this occurred in 1972, and at least 6 people died.
That my father was arrested for stealing $100,000 worth of Hershey's Kisses, and during his time in jail I found out that he was not my biological father. My biological father owned a chain of restaurants that I frequented as a kid and teenager. I found all this out a few weeks after my 18th birthday.
What would you even want with $100,000 worth of Hershey's Kisses?
I was 6 years old and my parents took my family down to Disney World. Yay! On the flight down, the pilot made an announcement that if you looked out the window, you could see the space shuttle launching. It was kind of far away, but I could definitely see it in a plume of smoke. Very cool. We land in Orlando, and everyone is dead silent, glued to the TVs. It was the Challenger, and it exploded on launch. I saw the Challenger explode.
The 28th of January, 1986. I faked playing a xylophone for 2 years so I could go to China once. I played trombone for 8 years through middle and high school, and I knew a few people at my college before I went there. They convinced me to join marching band, but were always complaining that the band director wrote impossible drills, 10 counts to move, 30 yards in some instances, run through the bass drums, that sort of crap. I, being the genius that I was, figured, well, I played keyboard in a ska band for a couple years. How hard could xylophone be? Xylophones don't march after all. Answer: xylophone is pretty goddamn hard, and I'd never played one in my life before the first day of band camp, which is when the auditions were. The guy doing the auditions was the percussion instructor for the College of Music, and after my audition, he told me to put the mallets down, step back, and never play xylophone again, which, to be fair, I did butcher the crap out of hot cross buns due to some sort of administrative mess-up. They never got around to actually kicking me out that year, and I hung around and pretended to play the xylophone. Now, every 2 years, my college's marching band takes a big trip somewhere overseas to perform and yada yada yada, and I had entered on an off year. The second year, I show up and do the same thing, except the percussion instructor has been fired. I never really dealt with him beyond defending him with my ability to butcher xylophone music, but to my understanding, he was a general butthole and the music department had been wanting to chuck him out for some time, so they made a big stink about him doing some paperwork incorrectly or something. So it was left to our section leaders to audition the section, and being good friends with the section leader, he just said, "Jenkins, hit something every now and again, but not very hard and make it look like you're playing," so that's what I did. I found the softest mallet in the place, barely tapped the keys, wham, bam, going to China. Everything would have worked out peachy. Except our band director also didn't pay any attention to the orchestra pit. So when he was doling out parts for the music we were going to
to play in China, he assigned me to concert bells. Like that tiny little 50-pound xylophone that has a sound that would cut through an aerial bombardment. Not only that, I had a solo at the beginning of The Moon Represents My Heart, which, as it was explained to me, is basically Somewhere Over the Rainbow for Chinese people. Everybody knows the song. It's a cultural treasure and not something you want to mess up at a national landmark because folks will notice. So I busted my butt actually learning how to play that bit over the span of a couple months and managed to avoid offending the people of Shanghai and Beijing. Not all the people, though. A group of Chinese youths caught me urinating into a bush in Shanghai's club district, and I had to duck into a place called Highway 3 with my dinger still hanging out to get away from them. Got to play a set of concert bells on the Great Wall and see a whole bunch of stuff in China, though.
It's ridiculous to me that seemingly no one who was ever in charge of this marching band really had any clue what the hell they were doing, or what was going on really with this band. When I was 19, some friends and I were visiting New York City. After picking them up from the airport, we decided it would be fun to drive down Broadway at night and see it all lit up. It was fun. We got some good pictures from the car, and around 8:30 we decided to drive home. Going northbound on the West Henry Hudson, we were talking and listening to some Journey when someone hopped the highway divider and ran out in front of my car, stopped, and looked right at us. There was no time to stop, no time to swerve, and at 50 miles per hour, he came crashing straight through the front windshield, hitting my best friend directly in the face. Immediately, I pulled over and called the police, then went to look to see if there were any slim chances the man might still be alive. I saw his legs swerved roughly 4 to 6 inches above the knee and on the road near where my car had stopped. My friend in the back seat was crying her eyes out, and my buddy was amped up on adrenaline and shock in the front seat waiting for the police to arrive and remove him from the car. Walking further back, I saw a bunch of people who had stopped to help crowded around the man. I saw his head caved in and a dark pool underneath him, before a kind old gentleman turned me away, saying, "You don't need to see this." In almost no time at all, the fire department was there helping my friend who had a broken nose and shards of glass embedded in his eye and face out of the car. When the ambulance arrived, they tried to pull him in with the man I had hit, which made him freak out and refuse and wait for another ambulance. The cops on the scene took down my story and ran a breathalyzer on me, but I hadn't been drinking. At this time in my life, I didn't drink. Then put my friend from the back seat and I in the back of a car to try and calm us down while they waited for the investigators to arrive. I had called my mom, who lived outside the city, to tell her I had been in an accident and that she should come for support. After about an hour, the investigators arrived, took time marking off the scene, and interviewed us again about what had happened. The police were very nice and all of us were in shock. After interviewing me, I asked the investigator where I could go to the bathroom. He nodded to the trees on the side of the highway and said to have at it. So I stood on the dimly lit bloody highway near the trees and under the watchful eye of the 50-block traffic jam I had created and let forth a stream I had been holding for hours. Afterwards, they took us back to the local precinct to finish paperwork and meet up with my mom and sister who were waiting there, after having left my stepbrother with my friend who had been taken to the hospital. They had gotten lost and caught in the same traffic I caused, which is why they didn't meet us at the scene. With the paperwork done, my mom asked what had happened to the man. The officer looked at my little sisters and then asked my mom and I to step outside. It was DOA. He had been released from prison that morning.
I was shocked when he extended his hand to me and thanked me for helping to
clean up the city.
After going to the hospital to get my friend and stepbrother, we went home for the evening. The next day, when we picked up my car from the auto shop, I saw the meager sunlight, the after image of what had transpired, blood and brain matter all over the front of my car, an imploded front windshield, and entering the car to take it to a place to get the glass repaired, a large chunk of bloody skull in the passenger's seat next to me, hidden under some napkins. My friend who had been in the passenger seat wandered over and I told him not to look inside, but he wouldn't listen and did anyway. I think that is when the reality of what happened sunk in for him, because his eye grew large and he turned around silently to go sit in my mom's car. The entire experience was completely surreal, especially during the drive to get the windshield repaired when alone I drove the car to the shop, the wind whistling through the broken glass. I want to believe that when the cops said, "Thanks for cleaning up the city," the guy who died was maybe just a real piece of work and did some awful stuff, but maybe this dude is just completely indifferent about this stuff, which is pretty horrible.
My other thought is that this individual also enjoys creative writing.
TLDR, almost had a knife to my brain because of some crazy quack doctor leaping to very rash conclusions.
Don't you hate it when doctors jump to conclusions? I know I've posted this somewhere before, but anyway.
I was 10, lived out in rural America where my closest neighbor was a football field's length away. Between us was an overgrown field that backed up to my neighbor's horse pasture. I used to run through the fields full blast with weeds and grass stalks and wildflowers that were taller than me. I didn't give a crap. So one morning I wake up and something isn't right. I have this horrible pain in my neck. My neck! Oh God, what happened to my neck? My neck was swollen to the point of it jutting past my chin. It was like a 350-pound person's neck on a little 90-pound girl. I screamed. Mom screamed when she saw it. We took off for the pediatrician right away. Of course, as fate would have it, my usual pediatrician wasn't in that day, so a stand-in was there. I remember very mild tests going on, nothing too crazy, before the doctor explains to my mother that it's a brain tumor and I'll have to have brain surgery right away. I am freaking out, and my mom isn't too calm either. She, however, rationalizes, and before she makes her plans to have them cut into my skull, takes me to her own doctor for a second opinion. The RN at that office peers at me for a minute, performs a few other mild tests, and then goes, aha, and lifts up my ponytail. She points at this small bump on the back of my neck and proudly exclaims, spider bite. 2 days rest and some penicillin and I was 100% again.
That was a pretty crazy conclusion to come to after it's like, well, when did the lump show up? Just this day. Then again, what kind of crazy spider bite was it? Around the age of 12, I was diagnosed with severe OCD. I struggled with it so much that I had psychiatrists say they could do no more for me. A therapist that made house calls, and I've even participated in studies, evaluated on the other side of a one-way mirror kind of stuff. Perhaps in desperation, my parents eventually sent me to a psychiatric hospital halfway across the country which specialized in the treatment of OCD. I was there for 3 months until my insurance ran out. Now I'm 22 years old and I've overcome it so much that nobody besides family even realizes anything is/was ever wrong with me. With all these people running around saying I'm so OCD, I eat my M&Ms one color at a time, and them not knowing me back then, I don't even bother divulging a part of my life they would be unable to comprehend the severity of. You know, I totally get that. As someone with ADHD who used to get support of it when I was a kid, and I used to see these people and they'd say to me things like, so, is your ADHD better now? Is it gone yet? And I go, well, I don't think it works like that. I absolutely hated those memes, but my point is those issues, mental disorders, learning difficulties never really go away. You simply learn to adjust your life around it and behave accordingly in certain situations, and people often don't talk about that much. I'm late to the thread, so this will probably get buried, but hey, I feel like telling the story. It's a bit spooky. Hopefully someone will find it a good read. My mom and I moved into a completely normal/average house when I was about 15. Everything was fine. We loved it. One day I was home sick from school and I was messing around on the computer when I heard our garage door open. I freaked out and went down the hall to get my mobile phone and saw the hallway door that connects to the garage opening. I panicked and yelled, "Get out!" and 2 young boys slammed the door and ran off. I started crying and called my mom. I don't know why I didn't call the police first, who told me to go next door to my neighbors and she was going to come home from work. When she got home, she was speaking to my neighbor for a bit. She, the neighbor, ended up telling us that she thought it was probably the young boy that lived in the house before us. Apparently, he sometimes goes around to everyone's houses and breaks in and eats their food and watches TV and stuff. And for whatever reason, they were all okay with that. Apparently, he came from some sort of broken home and they all felt sorry for him, so they didn't call the police. Mom and I were completely unsettled by that and put new locks on all the doors that week. We didn't care if the other neighbors were okay with that. We weren't. A few months pass and nothing ever happens again. We figure he knows we're not cool with his weirdness and doesn't try to break in again. A week or so later, I'm in bed asleep and I wake up in the middle of night for no reason at all. I'm not hot or cold. I don't need to pee. I didn't have a nightmare. I just woke up. I had this incredibly uneasy and weird feeling wash over me. I felt like something or someone was watching me and I got completely freaked out. I went into my mom's room and slept in her bed that night. It kept happening a few nights and I thought I was just having nightmares or was getting scared of the dark for some reason. I ended up sleeping in my mom's bed for about a week because I got so legit scared of the dark now. I finally worked up the courage to sleep in my own bed one night, but I could barely sleep. I felt totally uneasy, nervous, scared. I got to sleep for a bit, but then I woke up again. I looked outside my window
window and I could swear I saw a face/figure of someone standing there. Obviously, I noped the hell out and ran back to my mom. One of the nights I was back in her bed. We were all asleep and feeling fine when I woke up to my dog on the end of the bed growling. Now, our dog is an old golden retriever and has never growled or barked at anything. She is a huge wuss and completely placid. She has no problem with strangers. Even if someone knocks on the door and comes in, she couldn't care less. So I wake up all dazed, confused, and half asleep. I hear the dog growling and I'm asking her, what's wrong? I look up from the bed and I'm not lying to you, there is a man standing in the doorway with a knife. I screamed like a banshee and the dog started barking at this point. Mom woke up and saw the man too. He went running down the hallway and out the back door. I'm crying my eyes out. The dog is barking her face off and Mom is frantically trying to call the police. An hour later they finally get here and of course the dude is gone. Morning comes and we go outside to see that the back gate has had its lock cut with bolt cutters and the door leading into the house had been smashed in. The cops come in and dust for prints and leave crap everywhere, but at the end of the day they can't and don't do anything. We moved out that same day and went to live with my grandmother and grandfather until we found a new house. Pretty much no one in the family believed us or thought we were just making it up for attention. My family are buttholes. A few weeks later, we get a call from the police, and they managed to match the prints to some teenager who just got arrested for breaking into another house. It's the same guy that was breaking into all the houses in the neighborhood and used to live in the house we were in. So Mom's talking to the cops and some of the neighbors when suddenly someone tells us completely casually, "Oh yeah, that's the Millet kid." Wait, did they just say Millet? Yeah, pretty much any Australian will know this last name. Ivan Millet, the serial killer. His nephew was breaking into people's homes and our home while we were sleeping with a knife, and people were okay with that. So anyway, we move into a new house and forget all about it until a year ago. Millet's nephew gets 43 years jail sentence. He and his friend murdered another teenager in the same goddamn place his uncle dumped all those bodies. WTF. So, the guy that broke into our house watched me while I was asleep and stood in our bedroom doorway with a knife while we were sleeping, actually murdered another teenager a few years later. Mom and I nearly fell over when we heard about it. No one really believes us, which really annoys me, but it really happened. Sometimes when I think back on what could have happened if I slept in my own bed that night, or if the dog didn't bark, or if we were never woken up, it really freaks me out. It's also left me with a huge fear of the dark. I get really uneasy if I have to go outside at night by myself or if I wake up in the middle of the night. Well, goddamn, I'm English and even I know who Ivan Miller is. But that is a legitimately terrifying story. I went to college at Belmont University in Nashville from 1999 until 2002. While I was there, I worked for record labels, as did a lot of friends who were all in the music business program. Well, one buddy worked for a label called Red Hill Records as an intern/gopher/indentured servant. So on occasion, we could go to events and meet industry people and artists, as this was a small label. They had an artist that we became friends with named Katie Hudson, who was a singer-songwriter at about 17 years old. We hung out all the time since we were just 18 ourselves and had nothing to do but study and bum around coffee shops. As our friendship developed, my roommate developed a huge crush on her. She never seemed to reciprocate the feeling, so I asked her what was wrong with him. You know, trying to be a good friend. And she revealed that she liked me instead of him. So, since I wanted to be a good friend, I had to turn her down because of his feelings for her. That girl went on to be Katy Perry. I kid you not.
I suppose that's pretty impressive. I'm not really a Katy Perry person, but good for this guy. And while I'm not going to read them, some of the follow-up comments are pretty cringe. My friend's father owned a Mercedes CLS when I was a senior in high school. One day when his father is gone, we take it out. We have some ganja in both of our grinders in the cup holders, which was freaking stupid. We always put that stuff in the trunk. As we approach a downsloped hill near our school in the most cliche manner possible, he decides he wants to show me how fast his dad's car can go. The road was narrow and the slope was pretty steep downwards, but went right back up after it reached the bottom. He books it, and by the time we reach the bottom of the hill, we're probably going 90 miles per hour. Right at the bottom, we pass a cop, like frickin' fly right by him. He turns his lights on and tries to turn around, but one or two cars gets between us and him. The road was so narrow that he had to do like a 3-point turn to get all the way around. We start to frickin' panic. I have no idea what came over me at this point. Only about 3 seconds after we see the cop, but seeing that it took him so long to turn around made me look at my friend and say, "Keep going." We go to the top of the hill, still going fast AF, take a right, go about 100 yards and take a left into a neighborhood. We go down a random driveway driveway in a cul-de-sac park and turned the car off. We chuck all of the ganja materials out of the car and slump down in our chairs, peeking back. We see the cop go around the cul-de-sac and leave the neighborhood. I swear to God, it was like the goddamn Italian Job. Never been so scared in my life. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. My mom thought Paul McCartney kidnapped me. My mom was walking with me on the beach in the Hamptons when I was an infant. McCartney came up to my mom and asked if he could hold me. My mom was in desperate need of the bathroom and didn't want to go inside with me, so she asked if McCartney wouldn't mind watching me for a few minutes. Apparently, I started sobbing, so he paced up and down the beach and my mom couldn't find me when she came out of the bathroom. She called my dad and they spent 2 hours looking for me before they found McCartney sitting on a bench chair with me in his arms. I don't care if the baby's crying. You stand exactly where I left you with my baby. If someone trusts you with their baby, you don't move an inch. This may get buried and not be as interesting as some of the others, but I have one that nobody ever believes. When I was in 4th grade, I was completely obsessed with Chuck Berry. I mean, religiously obsessed. I still am to a certain extent, but that was back in the day when I was first discovering rock and roll. Well, as fortune would have it, Chuck Berry came to my city to perform at the local venue. He must have been in his 70s at this point. I was beyond excited, so of course, my mother, being the caring and loving parent that she is, bought tickets and we went. The whole entire show, I was in the very front, and then I had an idea. I didn't know if it could possibly work or not, but there was a pause, and I went for it. While Chuck was tuning his guitar, I started yelling, "Mr. Berry, Mr. Berry!" To my absolute bewilderment, he leaned in from the stage and with a huge grin on his face asked me, "What's up, little buddy?" To which I replied, "Can I please sing Johnny Be Good with you?" Holy crap, he says yes. I'm a 4th grader on stage at a huge venue with the father of rock and roll about to sing one of his most famous songs with him. He starts the opening riff. I'm shaking, but not from stage fright. No, it was from sheer shock of being in this situation. I start singing. The crowd erupts. I bellow out the song. At the end, Chuck asks me, "What's your name, young man?" I tell him my name. The crowd starts cheering my name for a solid minute. It was the most incredible feeling and hands down the best gift I've ever received. Now, personally, I'm more of a fan of Maybelline, why can't you be true? Oh, Maybelline, why can't you be true? You just started doing the things you used to do. Cashiers, what's been the most interesting reaction you've experienced when someone's gotten their card declined? Not necessarily a bad customer behavior story, but one that I'll share anyway. I was a cashier at a chain hardware store, the big orange one. A mom, dad, and a few kids, all in ill-fitting clothes, but pleasant as all get out, come up to the register and look like they're having a rough day. They have 3 carts full of merchandise, all basic stuff. One of everything you would need if you were moving out or starting from scratch. Toilet paper, cleaning supplies, mop, broom, light bulbs, carts full of just everything you can imagine. I ask, "You guys moving to a new place?" The mother says, "Actually, our house burned down." I apologize for their circumstances and continue to ring up their items. The total ends up over $1,000. I run their card and it's declined. At this particular department store, you're allowed to discount a total up to $50 without manager approval. So I do that and it's still declined. The parents look like they're at their complete breaking point but are taking it so gracefully for a family with 3 kids who just lost everything. The mom tears up and starts calmly making decisions about what to put back. I asked them to hang tight, pulled the manager aside and explained the situation. The manager and I walked back to the family and they are still eliminating things. And my manager took 50% of the entire transaction, then added a 10% senior discount and a 10% military discount on top of everything. The card then worked and they were incredibly grateful and nearly in tears as I bagged everything up. I'll never forget how awesome that manager was. I didn't even really have to explain anything after I said, "So their house burnt down?" And she immediately jumped into action to show some compassion. A good old story about human kindness and compassion. Well, ain't that just peachy now? I was working at a mega bookstore. A man came up with 2 or 3 serious philosophy books. Then he flicked his credit card at me. Don't do that to a cashier, just don't. I said nothing and swiped his card. It declined. The screen asked me to call Amex. I tell the customer I have to call. He hisses at me not to say it so loud. I had a phone with me, so I made the call right there standing at the register. Amex tells me to confiscate the card, if you believe you can do that. So I say, sorry, they tell me I have to take your card. He screams, "My mother There is a crunt minus the R. She cut me off. I cut the card in half. I still feel good about that day. Literally cannot stand that attitude. This person sounded like they were just a little jerk, so I don't blame their mum for cutting them off. The fact of the matter is, people, your parents may have brought you into this world, but that doesn't mean they have to be responsible for you forever. I've talked about it before, but personal responsibility is just something that you have to accept eventually when it comes to living your life and being responsible for yourself and the way that you behave and treat other people. We see a fairly clever smoke and mirrors routine at my liquor store. Customer comes in, walks to the spirits hard liquor section and puts one bottle under their shirt while packing up a second and walking back to the register with it. They attempt to buy the second bottle with a card that they know will decline. Then they say they have to call their bank and dial the number as they leave. Misdirection works. These goddamn alcoholic criminals can learn misdirection and deception, but they can't learn the 12 steps. Cashier at a drive-thru. I took his card at the first window, told him it was declined. He says, "All right, I'll just go, I guess." He pulls up to the next window, demands his food, then slams on the gas, pulling away, almost crashing into another car. That boy wanted his Wendy's. If you are ever hungry enough to steal, get fruits and vegetables and things. I remember I was in America fairly recently in LA and I met this homeless guy. At least I assume he was homeless because he was pretty dirty and preaching the word of God. Anyway, I decided to buy this guy some food at like a bodega or something. He's picking out cereal packets and everything. And I say to him, "Oi, take a banana." And he's like, "What? No, I don't want a banana." I'm like, "Take a goddamn banana. It's full of potassium. It's good for you." Like seriously, if you're gonna steal food, get something that is wholesale good for you, not goddamn Wendy's or McDonald's or something like that, I swear. I had this one lady who just kept making me re-scan it over and over and over again until eventually my manager had to shoo her away. She was clearly desperate, but I worked at a store where nothing we sold was necessary for daily life. Literally nothing, so I didn't have much sympathy.
Liquor store?
No, we had like ugly fake plants and furniture and random decorative things. I'd be sympathetic for alcohol. That was multiple comments on the same thing, but I felt like it was necessary for the context, and yeah, I wouldn't be that sympathetic about that either. I was at a fairly uncrowded Walmart in a nice neighborhood at about 11 p.m. and my card didn't get declined, but there was something strangely wrong with it. It was the only form of payment I had. The cashier kept trying to punch in numbers and doing all sorts of computer stuff, and he needed to see my driver's license for some reason. It was taking forever, and I became overwhelmed with paranoia that it was a Jason Bourne type situation, that I swiped my card and an alert came up on the screen with a big red X and a code that meant he needed to stall as long as possible until men in suits could surround the building and I could be apprehended. I was sweating bullets and thought about running, but then it finally went through and I could take my milk and Reese's home. My man out here buying some Reese's Pieces and he thinks he's gonna get Jason Bourne. My God, buddy, I need to tell you something. It's okay, but you are not the one. Mostly it's just, oh no, that should definitely go through. Try it again. Fails. Let me check the bank. Calls and moans at the bank for a bit. Now try. Works. Now that I think about it, my card has never been definitively declined. I've had times where the tap doesn't work or it's like, you're suddenly spending a lot of money. Is this actually you doing this? Yes, it is. Okay, and then it works again. I had one lady who screamed and accused me of purposely making her card decline to embarrass her, as if a 16-year-old making minimum wage somehow could manage that or would have any reason to do that to a stranger. I don't doubt that, but teenagers can be excessively cruel. Back in the 90s, I worked for Rumblos. Had a guy pick out a new TV and VCR, wanted warranty. Nice easy sale. Trouble is, I noticed the signatures were a bit different, and in those days, anything over £100 you had to phone through for authorization. So I did, and the card was stolen. Lady at the other end of the phone said I was as much as possible supposed to hold the line and keep the customer in the store as the police had been called. So I say to the guy, "Sorry, it seems their system is playing up, so it's going to take a while for the authorization to come through." He seems fine with it. Waited and waited what must have been 20 minutes and another customer said, "You know what, mate? You're making it look like he's stolen that card." I told him that I was just told to wait for the authorization code and that would take a while. Because their system, yada yada yada. Card bearer pegged it out of the shop. I could now explain to the Good Samaritan that the card was stolen and in the nicest way possible that he was a butt and he should keep his thoughts to himself. Got paid £50 for the card, handed it to the police who turned up about 5 minutes after he'd bailed, told them what he was wearing, but he was long gone. Wow, both those men were tossers in the end. Several years ago, the day after Christmas at Target, a woman has 3 carts full of marked down Christmas merchandise. My scanner was broken, so I had to hand type each UPS code in by hand. Needless to say, it took a while. The customer snottily complains about how much I was inconveniencing her by taking so long. Finally finished ringing up her purchases, and she hands me a card. Declined. She had me run it again. Declined. Again. Sighing outrageously, she pulls out her wallet and flips it open. I swear the woman had like 20 credit cards. She starts wiggling her fingers over them like she's picking a tarot card. Hands a new card to me. Declined. Another card. Declined. Has me try several cards more. All declined. Finally, super frustrated, she writes me a check. In mounting glee, I tell her it's declined also. She slams her front card away and stomps out the exit. Lady behind her asks if her items are up for grabs. I say, yep, and proceed to watch as a horde of people ravage the contents of the carts. It was awesome, like watching sharks eat chum. I still think people are generally better off without credit cards because some people just can't be trusted. I had a customer that was yelling in multiple languages in my lobby demanding a refund onto his gift card. We had already made his drinks, but he said it took too long. Smoothie shop midsummer. It's going to take a bit as always. The guy wouldn't stop yelling, was trying to take other customers' smoothies to replace his, even though his were in his hands, all good. After trying to convince him that I absolutely cannot give him a refund on the gift card without the actual gift card and number, he finally walked up to the register, deliberately knocking over 2 stanchions with the guided rope between them, then proceeded to flick the 2 gift cards at me, both missing and going over my shoulder. The craziest part is in the end, he actually didn't pay on the gift cards. He paid in cash. Wanted the smoothies refunds put on these non-reloadable gift cards, but also to keep the smoothie. At that point, I went to hand him back the cards. He dropped his smoothie, one was mostly gone, and kept the other, and just walked out the door, leaving $50 in gift cards. Utterly astounding interaction.
Yes, I agree. What an ignoramus.
I had a lady break down and start crying. While she was in the line, she already looked like her world was falling apart. I don't remember what it was she brought, but I don't think it was more than $30, and the guy behind her offered to pay for it. More crying ensued. You know, I'm sure most people would feel sympathetic to this crying woman, but I bet there's someone out there, a Squidward of a human being, who's just like, okay, lady, let's keep the line moving. We've already established you can't afford it. Go on, leave. That'd be awful. But even then, as cruel as that might seem, it's not even the wrong response to have to it. I was moving from Tennessee back home to Ohio. I had my entire life in my car and it got towed in the college town I made a stop in to have lunch with a friend. I had $100 to get home, costing me $120 to get my car out. My friend covered the $20, but I only had a half a tank of gas to get home. Was counting change at the gas station I stopped at. Needed about $10 to get home, I believe, and started crying and having a panic attack. Went to the bathroom and came back. The cashier told me the guys behind me filled up my tank and to have a safe trip home. More crying, and it was just a really good feeling to know there are decent human beings in the world. Well, if I had an interaction that sweet on my travels back home, I'd be singing all the goddamn way. Just the other day, I had a lady whose card got declined. Her response was to try it about 6 more times, then it hit her. She forgot to take her card out of her pocket, and long story short, she managed to demagnetize her card. Her solution was to run home and grab cash, which wouldn't have been a big deal, except she ran her food stamp card first, and the register physically will not let me do anything except finish tendering. So I had to cash her out, return the non-food items, hold them until she got back, and re-ring them. And yes, she spent a good 5 minutes ranting about how I was conspiring against her until she figured out what had happened. Because a lot of people are asking, I couldn't key in her card number manually because I have to have the card in my hand to do it, and the customer refused to give it to me. All the while, this woman is accusing this person. She's picturing that if she accuses them enough, he's going to turn around and go, "Kuna dioda!" On the receiving end, I was working in construction pretty far from home, and for lunch I went to get an $8 custom sandwich from a fancy grocery store. At the register, my card got declined, and when it did, I immediately checked my phone and saw I had a 0 balance. I told the lady, sorry, I can't pay for this, and she said, wait, hold on, and called a few people over, and she ended up paying it for me. I still remember her face. I tried to pay her back after my next payday, but she said, no, I don't want it. I like to help, and I imagine no other people will do the same. I will never forget her. She turned what would have been a depressing day into something I will never forget. I was told to be quiet and polite when explaining that a card wasn't working, so when the transaction was declined, I tried to keep my voice down. Older gentleman with family asked me to speak up. He still couldn't hear me. His family laughed and said something like, "You daft bugger, the card's been declined." He laughed and said he used the wrong card. Fortunately, the other one worked. At least it was a positive reaction. Uneventful. All I have to say is, English? I don't know how it is now, but 20 plus years ago when I worked as a cashier, if we called in for a manual verify, the only thing we ever said was a code X decline. We were never told what the codes meant, but apparently one of them was a tip-off to the verifying team to send the police. I found that out when I had one that was taking an extremely long time to go through, kept asking all sorts of stuff like confirming our address and systemic delays. When the popo showed up, I knew what was going on. Phoning in for authorization was handy. In the 90s, I had a couple young guys come into our music store. My aunt says I can buy a DJ set up as a graduation present. He proceeds to show me this handwritten note on a napkin.
I allow my nephew to buy a DJ setup as a graduation present.
Naturally, he starts picking out the best of everything. Or when there were two great items, each with a slightly different advantage, he took both. The buddy had some stuff thrown in for himself as well. Full PA system, stands, cables, mics, the controller, the pile gets deep. So I run the card in the imprinter, make the call, actually to the police, while an employee distracts him with information on certain pieces. I hung up and told him for the high amount they had to call me back with the authorization number. It is typical, should be 5 minutes. Cops showed up, the kids turned white, they get escorted outside. Turns out they were out swimming at a local beach and stole the credit card from a lady's purse. I'm just gonna say, screw them kids. Like, it's one thing to steal physical money from someone, but to attempt to accrue massive credit card debt on someone else's card, that's just scummy. I know that the banks usually reimburse you if you get found being a victim of fraud, but they deserve a swift kick in the nether regions. I was 16 years old, working for minimum wage at the Jesus Chicken restaurant. A guy and his daughter came in and she was in a gymnastics uniform. They order and she starts telling me all excited about how every time she has an out-of-town competition, they try the local chicken chain together. Their total was only $16, but his card got declined. He pulled out a second, but it declined too. She looks disappointed and he tells me to cancel the order. But it was only $16, so I run to the back and grab my own card and run it through. They get their food and he lingers behind to thank me and tells me that he's going through a divorce and they probably wouldn't have gotten to continue their tradition if I hadn't stepped in. I felt good doing that for someone without expecting anything in return, but to my surprise, right at closing that night, my manager comes to the back and says someone is asking for me. The guy came back and gave me $30 and thanked me for making his daughter's day. Since a lot of people seem to have questions about the money and/or validity of this event, I'd like to address them. My card was a debit, not credit. Don't know why that matters. When the guy came back at closing to give me the money, he had plenty of cash on him. My guess is he had it back at his hotel. He thanked me for making his daughter's day because he'd been going through a rough divorce and his soon-to-be ex had most likely cancelled his cards and had been pulling stunts like that a lot, hence the backup stash of cash. I paid for the food instead of having them come back because my parents had been talking about paying things forward in our family, and I wanted to do something nice for someone besides it was only $16. Jesus Chicken is Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I admittedly just wanted to know if Jesus Chicken was a real place, so I'm glad they answered that. I'm disappointed though. Not me, but an elderly lady in front of me at a Walgreens. She had mostly food items when her card declined. She was gracious and simply pulled a couple items aside. It went through, but I saw that the items were nuts and jerky. You know, protein sources. And I started imagining her being on a fixed income and being malnourished, so I paid for them myself and then found her in the parking lot and said, "Ma'am, excuse me, but I think you left this behind," and handed her the bag. I walked away quickly before she could say anything. I have another story about how I bought a guy a Slurpee at a 7-Eleven because his card declined for something that literally costs a couple bucks and my heart broke for him. I figure this is my neighborhood, these are my neighbors. I know what it's like to be broke as all get out. If I can spare a couple of dollars, then why not?
Ooh, you big softy.
I bought a girl that was crying a ticket to a big music festival after hearing her out. She'd been conned and lost €300. It would have been her 5th time and all her friends were already inside, but her ticket was declined. I still remembered the times that I needed to plan stuff like that in advance and save up. So I told her to hold on, made a few calls and told her to hang on, and tell me a bit about what she was looking forward to keep her from stressing out, telling her over and over that it was going to be okay. 15 minutes later, I got a call and a text with a scannable ticket. Walked in with her, brought her €100 $50 worth of coupons, gave her a hug, and left. Now, my country is pretty small, but this was 300 kilometers away from home. I just felt like doing something nice and didn't want her to think that there was anything more to it. Almost 5 months later, she ended up finding me at my store. We talked, I thought she was cute, nothing more happened for another 6 months. A week before the festival, she showed up again. She'd moved to a city a few kilometers away from me for uni, so we lived within minutes of each other now. Went to the festival together and had fun. I fell for her badly. Asked for her to go on a date with me while we were both high, ended up taking her to the fanciest restaurant at the festival. Had amazing food. Got pretty drunk later, and that's how I met my girlfriend. Definitely better than most stories, and it's not the first time being nice has paid off, but it's not why I help others. It's only 9 days until the festival, and I want to tell this story to someone. I might ask her to marry me. I'm a wreck right now. Haven't slept in 2 days. Just needed to tell someone. Sorry if it bothered you. I don't know why your story would bother anyone unless they're a petty, jealous, loveless little goblin man. My only thought is, while I am fairly generous, I would never spend that much money on a stranger. This happened to me and I was mortified. In my defense, it wasn't declined due to lack of funds or available credit. I went to Nordstrom's or Macy's to pick up a few items for a holiday. I think the item in question was a purse for my mom. It wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap either, like $250 to $300. I had placed the order online for pickup in store. Walk in, talk to the lady, get item, and go to the register. We tried to run my card, bam, declined. What? She runs it a few more times and still declined. I'm confused and a little embarrassed at this point. I call my bank, Wells Fargo, and ask them what is going on and why can't they push through the charge. They claimed the one I had expired. I read the expiration back to them and told them it was perfectly fine. It wasn't until later that the real story came out. Apparently, they detected fraud somewhere in my account, but no actual charge fraud, and decided to cancel my card and issue a new one. They did so without notifying me. They also said since it was a fraud hold, they couldn't push this transaction through, not even a one-time exception. I had to sullenly tell the teller that I would be back tomorrow. It was close to closing time for them. She gave me this look like I wasn't going to be back. That probably hurt the most. I went back the next day and bought the crap out of that purse. You go, girl. You buy that purse. You live your best life. You show that judgy teller. Not declined, but a card machine not working at Subway. Just happened a week ago. Walked into Subway, they had a big sign on the door, cash only, card machine malfunction. I, of course, didn't notice as I was on my phone. Ordered my sub and had an issue as I had no cash. So I went to the ATM down the street, got money, and ate my sub, no issue. Another guy walks in and the same thing happens to him. He also decides to go to the ATM down the street, only his card gets declined. He says it's because he was out of state and his bank wouldn't allow it. So he comes back to tell the lady, and she's really sorry. He gets really angry and walks out the door yelling, "Next time make the sign a little bigger so I don't waste all my effing time. Thanks a lot." I'm sure some people have had worse reactions to things like that, but I couldn't help but laugh. Yes, the sign could have been a little bit bigger, but when I walked back in after going to the ATM, I realized the sign was pretty damn decently sized. Could the cashier have asked each customer beforehand? Yeah, she started doing that after this guy was a butthole, but really, is it her fault that he wasn't paying attention? Luckily, I never come across this issue because I insist upon carrying at least a bit of cash around on me. And establishments that decide that they only take debit and credit card are frickin' moronic. Parents, have any of you regretted the names you have given your children? I used to work tech support with a guy whose name was Gandalf. In the 70s, when he was born, Tolkien wasn't even a nerd thing. It was a hippie thing. His parents were big hippies and loved the books. So they named him Gandalf. His sister's middle name is Galadriel. He said at first people rarely recognized the name. It was a weird name, sure, but few people knew he was named after a fictional wizard. Until the movies came out. He hates Peter Jackson. Well, for one thing, leave Peter Jackson alone. The only people that individual has to blame are their parents. And the other thing is, I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up with a name that is very nice, but people bullied me and ridiculed me for it for years. But I don't know. I think Gandalf could work. I think they can make it work. 12 years ago, we had twin boys. We knew one would be Thomas after my wife's uncle, but struggled to name the second. For about 28 hours, he was baby B. When we finally settled on Jeremiah, 2 days later, we introduced them to our pastor, and he said, "Oh, cute, Tom and Jerry." I looked at my wife, and we were both thinking, oh, we did not just do that, but we left it. My God, the fights those brothers must have had. My friend's parents met during the 60s and they were/are crazy hippies, and they have practiced a lot of different religions. When my friend was born, they decided to give him 14 middle names: Dorsey, Abdul, Jaleel, Francis, Brian, Albert, Barney, Willie, Kowalski, Jeffrey, Faith, Lovestar, Breeze. He has a common first and last name, and they said all of that at graduation. Well, goddamn, they might have practiced a lot of different religions, but clearly the son took on Christianity because he honored the crap out of the name his mother and father gave him. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's a middle name. It's avoidable. I work in a social services agency that deals with children. The names I have seen are quite amazing. Along with random variations of names and brands of alcohol, you get some interesting biblical ones too. Like the 3 kids in one family named Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The one that I cringed at the most, though, was this poor little girl named Erotica. They are not even giving her a chance. Oh, this makes me wonder if maybe there should be rules where it's like, oh, what's your baby's name? Oh, it's Erotica. Oh, I'm sorry, man, but this baby is immediately being taken to Child Protective Services. I think my mother regrets my name. She wanted to call me Sebastian, but my grandmother insisted she would call me Sebastart, but with a D. She caved and named me Joshua. So when we had our first son, we named him Sebastian. I've never seen my mother so happy. My grandmother calls him by his middle name. I think I'm more interested in the story of why grandmother hates the name Sebastian so much. Is it the name of a lover who scorned her, a mortal enemy, a dog she didn't like? There was a kid at my school called Internet Castle. This is not a joke, by the way. Internet Castle. Hopefully none of these people like giving out absolute full names or anything like that, but I can't help but worry a little bit, and maybe the producers will confirm this with me or not, but are we kind of doxing people by reading these? Well, my mother doesn't regret naming me Shaw. Doesn't seem so bad because it's a fair family name. But as my first name, it causes great confusion. For example, if I introduce myself to someone, I have to clarify that my name isn't actually Sean or Shaw. Then, of course, the conversation goes as follows. Yeah, it's spelled S-H-A-W. And they say, "Are you sure?" Which sounds exactly like "Are you sure?" in my regional accent. He drops an F-bomb at the end of this, but there's no real good supplement for an F-bomb just on its own. I work at a clinic with parental moms. Once baby is born, I help make sure they're coming in for appointments. I can't tell you the feelings I felt trying to schedule an appointment for Brenpen, the newborn. I mean, Brenpen sounds a bit silly, but I don't think anything's gonna beat naming your little girl Erotica. Like, it's gonna take something real bad for me to be like, yeah, that's worse than Erotica. My actual first name is Jeff. People think I'm from New Zealand and I'm saying Jeff. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It could still be worse. Consider your initials carefully. My surname begins with a W. My brother had a daughter and named her Jennifer Elizabeth. Pretty vanilla, huh? They got a ton of blankets and cups with Jew engraved on each piece. We aren't Jewish. That's pretty funny, yeah. My wife regrets my kid's initials, FCK, but I think his pickup line choices could be hilarious. My initials are FCK. All I need is you. Okay, yeah, that's really good, actually. Almost on topic, my Nigerian friend was telling me that when he was teaching in Louisiana, the black people would come up and ask him if their names meant anything back in Africa. Apparently, 2 African Americans were named after furniture, but he was nice about it and said something like Proud Lion and Lord of Many. Line of them was probably for the best, but I'm just picturing him looking them in the eye and be like, "You are footstool." My middle name is My Love. It's not my first name, but it still stuns people when I first tell them. That was a little ha-ha at the end, and I just felt like doing a Scooby-Doo laugh. My mother and stepfather picked out and agreed upon a name for my little sister while my mom was pregnant. Her middle name was supposed to be Kate. Stepman never said anything about it. He liked it, was fine with it. Baby gets born, birth certificate is being written out, mom's exhausted, so she lets baby's dad deal with it. A few weeks later, mom takes a look at the new social security card and birth certificate and flips her lid because the middle name on all this paperwork is Lay, even though that name had never come up in discussion. She didn't even know until she stumbled across it by accident quite a bit too late. My parents are hippies that grew up in the 70s. Thankfully, I got away with a reasonable name. Jem. I've seen Jem in the holograms. My 2 younger brothers are named Conan and Torald. Our parents have never expressed regret over any of our names, though. I'm a guy, and my parents were inspired by Harper Lee when naming me. They were really hoping for a girl, and the first choices for names were Kitty or Jem with a G. My dad said they didn't think of any boy names until after I was born. Then they remembered the character in To Kill a Mockingbird and changed Jem to Jem. Voila! Torald. Bald's a pretty cool name.
And what is with these hippies naming their kids after fictional characters? I mean, even I have a name that's like kind of, it's not specifically, but you know, I share a name with a few popular fictional characters.
My first name is just a letter. It gets better. I have an identical twin brother, and his first name is also a letter. We each have normal middle names, but letters is first names. It's because my dad thought it looked elegant, and not typical letters. I'm talking about 3 of the last letters. Thanks, Dad. Filling out any sort of paperwork for damn near anything is a pain in the butt. I know I can change my name, but I don't want to go through that hassle when I'm already used to the crappy name I was given. To answer OP's question, my dad doesn't regret it, but my mom wishes he would have waited until after the epidural wore off from her C-section to name us. The names are X and Z, so much for privacy. I posted this as a reply, but I thought I should address the justified claims indicating my mom might have gone along with the letters X and Z as first names. So I asked my mom why she was out. She's 5 foot and 95 pounds, she's an emergency room physician, and when the day arrived for my twin and I to be born, she didn't have any contractions. Typically, twins aren't carried full term, but here we are 9 months later in full term. The obstetrician decided that a cesarean would be the safest choice considering my mother was 40 at the time. The anesthesiologist administered the epidural, but it was too large a dose for my mom, seeing as she's such a tiny person. When my mother was having a hard time breathing, she told the anesthesiologist that she knew the area above the diaphragm had been numbed and started to panic because she couldn't breathe, and so the anesthesiologist administered a dose of Valium, so my mom became unconscious. When she awoke, she realized for the first time that my dad definitely married up. I ain't even gonna say anything about the names. In fact, overall, I'm not gonna insult people for the names that they're given or anything. The worst one so far, as I've said, it's erotica. It's still gonna be erotica by the end of this, I imagine. But goddamn, what's with these men and just not discussing with their wives what they're gonna name their children or just going rogue? A friend's middle name is Baldrick. His parents thought it would be funny after watching too much Blackadder. For the uninitiated, Blackadder is a really funny English television series set around the 1500s because Queen Elizabeth the first is a main character in it, and then there was Blackadder Goes Forth where it's set in the trenches of World War II. Anyway, Baldrick is basically a massive idiot who usually screws things up, or maybe inadvertently kinda helps in his own stupid way. My legal name was Carne Asada Jones. I had it changed at 18. They basically called him Sliced Beef, for those who don't know.
You know what? I'm actually gonna give that name second place for worst name on this list. It's still behind erotica, but not bad, not bad.
My friend and her brother are from Taiwan. When they moved to Australia, they were young. Their father chose Western-sounding names for them. My friend ended up with a relatively normal, if old-fashioned name, but he got her brother's name from a thesaurus. His name is Roget. Also, my ex's sister was born in Ethiopia, and whoever filled out the birth certificate must not have had very good English because her name has about 4 times as many vowels as it strictly needs. And once I saw a girl working in a fast food restaurant with a name tag that read alimony. I have a mate whose name is Irwin. Not horrible, but his brother's is Irvin. Okay, personally, I gotta say, I actually really like the name Roget. I think that sounds cool, but Owen, there's nothing wrong with the name, and Irvin is fine too, I guess, but when I hear the name Owen, all I'm getting are flashes of that kid from bloody Billy and Mandy. My best friend named her firstborn son Jaden. When she told me the name, I asked her if she really wanted to do that. She said yes. That and her husband liked the name but wanted to make it a little different by adding an additional N. She now regrets it. The fact that she regrets it shouldn't bring me joy, but it does. Good luck on those biz cards, little guy. I am not quite sure what's actually wrong with that name. It looks a little bit silly on paper, I guess, but everyone in the comments below even is just oh, this name sucks. I knew a girl in high school named Cassiopeia. People called her Cass for short. I got why she was named that. Her dad was an astronomer by profession. There's not a single thing wrong with that name. It's kind of cute, if anything. I once knew a guy in high school whose last name was Sweat, and the poor dude's parents made his first name Richard. That's right. Connect the dots. See, I don't think that's that bad really, because it's just the nickname that everyone knows goes with that for some reason, but that's not their name. But, of course, it is unfortunate. My ex and I had a great marriage until it fell apart 14 years in. Up to that point, the worst thing we ever fought about was baby names and paint colors. She wanted our first to be Zebulon Zachariah. Not even kidding. We fought and fought about it. She was dead serious, and I was completely baffled as to how she thought that was a good idea. Finally talked her into a more sane first name and conceded Zachary is a middle name. Second child, she wanted D'Artagnan. Little Dart, she would say. Oh, hell no. We fought over this one while she was in labor. On the way to the hospital. She wasn't giving up. I won that one too with something not common but sane at least. Third child, she was back on the D'Artagnan train. Fought for 9 solid months. Thank God that one was a girl. Okay, Zebulon, kinda ridiculous, but D'Artagnan? Ooh, Dart. Darty boy, D'Artagnan, my friend. Nah, D'Artagnan sounds cold as fur. Like maybe you could shorten Zebulon to just Zeb. That sounds kinda cool. Just Zeb though. Do not put Zebulon on the birth certificate. I went to a summer camp with a guy called Raymond. Seriously, first name Raymond, second name Raymond. Naturally, we gave him hell for it. Me. So, were your parents drunk or something? Raymond squared. I was named after a very well-respected relative, actually. Me. So, were his parents drunk? He didn't talk to me much after that. 10 out of 10 roasting, I'll give you that, but see, this is why I don't really make fun of people's names or anything like that, because you do not control your name when you are born. I'm not going to take the mick out of someone for something that they didn't have a choice in. My husband and I had a deal. If it was a girl, I got to pick, and if it was a boy, he did. Our son's name is Loki. I'm not a big fan, but he loves it. I keep hoping it will grow on me. Norse god of mischief? You're just asking for a little Hellraiser at that point. Now I got that picture of the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy in my head, where Billy goes to Valhalla and Loki is like this skinny guy, like pulling on an elastic band, and Odin goes, Loki, remember what happened last time, as he points to his eye. Yeah, all you normies will bring up Marvel or something, but frankly, I'm so totally goddamn done with Marvel. We named our daughter Isabel because it was a name on both of our lists that matched. We wanted a long name, something regal but could be shortened up. We talked about Elizabeth, Victoria, those sort of names. Decided on Isabel. My only regret is we did this as Twilight was dying down and everyone assumed her name was Isabella, even after I spelt it out over the phone for them several times, with an E on the end, Isabel. People would ask and still ask, do you call her Bella? That'd be so cute. No, shut the hell up. You know what? That would that'd be kind of infuriating. Not a parent, and sort of the opposite here. My brother and his then-fiancée were about to have a kid, and they argued about the name all the way to the delivery room. He wasn't around when they had to do the paperwork for the baby's name, and he was upset when she named their son Logan. I mentioned to him that it's not a terrible name. After all, it's Wolverine's name. About a week or so later, I hear him on the phone with a friend talking about how he didn't like the name until he realized that his kid is named after Wolverine. Logan. Strong, manly name. It's a name you gotta live up to, though. My wife and I have a daughter that we named Jordan. I'm fine with that. My wife is a very independent woman, and Jordan is kind of a strong name for a girl. Now we're thinking about having another kid, and if it's a boy, she wants to name him Michael. Jordan and Michael. Michael and Jordan. I'm 6'7", she's 6'3", and both very white. She somehow thinks it won't be weird if our most likely tall children are named after freaking Michael Jordan. I don't want to be answering questions or listening to jokes about their names for the next 20 years, though. I don't really get this dude's damage, to be honest. I mean, is that what people are gonna think about when you hear them or call them? It's like, Michael Jordan. Yeah, people are gonna think it, but it's like, whatever, who gives a crap? I have a friend from high school who has 4 kids. Oldest is Landon, perfectly normal if very popular. Second is Caden, getting more odd, but still in the realm of normal. Third and only girl is Kensley. Now you're just making things up. And she's due any day with her 4th, Brogan. I really hope they are done since the names are getting progressively worse. My cousin also just had a baby, and I have no idea how to pronounce the name. Ellie, best guess is like Ellie, but no one can confirm this. Okay, well, earlier I said that you can name your kids whatever you want and stuff, just don't make it erotica or anything like that. It's like the people earlier saying Jaden with a double N at the end and stuff like that. I don't get the point of naming your kids pretty regular stuff, but being like, it's gonna be a regular name, but I'm going to add different letters to it so it just sounds the same. And it's like, what's the point?
I guess this will get buried, but this thread seems to be filled with not answers to the question. So I named my oldest daughter Darian because my husband, then we were 17 and very stupid, wanted to call the baby Damien. And this was my compromise because I wasn't naming a child after the demon child in The Omen. Also, there was a female DJ on the radio at the time called Darian, so I thought it would work. Well, it turns out that Darian is most often a boy's name and very often a black name. My daughter is in her 20s now and she has never let me live it down. Everywhere she goes, people expect a black man. She's a nerdy, short, white chick. I swear I had good intentions. I was literally just thinking to myself as I read that Darian's more of a boy's name, isn't it? Used to work with a girl named Latrina. Latrine jokes constantly. Any name that has an easy joke to make is a bad idea. Poor kid is going to hear it 1,000 times. Oh boy, howdy, do I know that feeling. 50 years ago, the family a few doors down from me had a son. They called him Boyd. His surname is George. They are fundamentalist Christians. Bet they regretted that. So rather than Boy George, it's Boyd George? In Chile, we have an urban legend that in Valparaiso, one of our main port cities, there are many kids named Usnavi. Why, you ask? Well, being a port city, it is host to ships from worldwide navies from time to time, including the U.S. Navy. Legend says that any girl who gets pregnant after a night of party with a U.S. Navy sailor names her child with the name tag his theoretical father had, and that tag says U.S. Navy, hence the name Usnavi. If that is actually true, that's really interesting. I found a Verizon bill on the ground one time. Figured I would dispose of it in case it had any important information. Guy's name was Michael Michaels. Little bit silly, but definitely memorable. Not a parent myself, but I tried to warn my friend that everyone was going to be naming their kid Jacob because of the damn Twilight movie, and she was cursing her kid to years of sharing classes with other people of the same name. Her and I both have very common names for our age group, and she agreed that it was really annoying. And she also hates those Twilight movies, but she stuck to Jacob nonetheless. Sure enough, Jacob was the #1 most common name for the year her Jacob was born. Poor baby Jacob. Poor all baby Jacobs. Don't name your baby Jacob. I think this personal vendetta for the name Jacob goes beyond the Twilight movies. My mom was going to name me Tawny, as in Tawny Kitane, or better known as the chick from that Whitesnake video. It was the late 80s and my mom was 17. She didn't go through with it because when I was born, I didn't look like a Tawny. My brother was named after Samuel Adams. No, not one of the founding fathers of the United States, but after the beer. I don't think they regret it. I just think it's interesting to share. Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm not really feeling Tawny either.
My mom wanted to name me Stuffin'. What the hell is a stuffin'?
I don't know, bro. Maybe she just thought it was cute. My wife is fortunately somewhat more sensible than me and vetoed all of my wacky name choices, so I do not have a Shamalar, nor a River, Temperance, Winfred, or a Ford. I'm still a bit sore about Winfred and River, but I do concede that she had a point with the rest in hindsight. I was allowed more leeway with the middle names, and my eldest has the middle name Neris, as in Major Kira, which would be fine except that it's spelled exactly the same as a Welsh name, which is pronounced Neris, which is entirely not what I was going for. My son's middle name is Zed, so when anyone asks him what the Z in his name stands for, he can say Zed, which I thought at the time was really cool. Then sometime thereafter I came to the conclusion that it was stupid. Now I don't know what I think. He seems to like it though. Oh, and my daughter whose middle name is Storm is afraid of thunder and lightning. That last bit is pretty cute. Also, I don't know, I think some of the names this guy comes up with sound pretty cool. Not the namer, but the named. My rents named me Andrew, but it was recorded as Adnru. Apparently, my mother noticed soon after, but didn't actually care. She then lost my birth certificate, so I never knew. I found out when I got it replaced trying to get my license. I had to file court papers and everything to get it changed, and she thought the whole thing was hilarious. So no, my parents didn't regret anything. This has got me paranoid about my own birth certificate now. I'm an Andrea and I'm a guy. The half-Italian explains it. Didn't help growing up in West Virginia. Hey, that's a girl's name. Not in Italy, I explain over and over. I never had much of a nickname, but I'm pretty sure it's really stunted my life. People can't remember it or they say it wrong because they just don't believe it. It's definitely a big problem. Not as much as I live in New York City, but still doesn't help. What was she thinking? She's only third generation, too. She should know naming a boy a common girl's name in West Virginia was an awful idea. I know I keep alluding to my name and stuff, and this isn't about me, but I also suffered with people insulting me and telling me that I had a girl's name or likening my name to a girl's name. So yeah, this one kind of hits home for me. I know a guy whose name is Tony, but it is spelled Tony.
That is so freaking dumb. No, that's the worst name. That's the worst name. For a smidgen of context for those of you who maybe don't understand, their name is spelled Toeknee. It's dumb. That's so dumb.
My dad wanted to change my name when I was about 6 months old because everyone at work was giving him so much crap. My mom's name is Pat. My dad's name is Rick. My name is Patrick. People who have ever hired homeless people with the "will work for food" signs, what was your experience like? One super cold night over Christmas break a couple of years back, my roommates and I were walking to Taco Bell and saw a homeless man laying in the parking lot. He had a cheap, thin blanket, so we brought him some food and asked him if he wanted to spend the night inside, and he came back and stayed at our house. Via Facebook, we helped him find his daughter, who he hadn't spoke to in a couple of years. He was able to wish her a Merry Christmas. I spent the night worrying that he would steal everything in the house. When I woke up, the blankets were neatly folded, and he had left us 2 pairs of socks and some deodorant. A week later, we came home to find that someone had raked all of our leaves for us. Haven't seen him since, but I hope he is well. 10 out of 10. Would do again. Lovely story, dig the human kindness. I myself could not help someone to that degree, allowing them in my home, but that's because I have skepticism and doubts in people's human nature. In college, I got my fraternity to hire a homeless guy I always talked to do security for our parties. I went to college in a pretty crappy city, and my fraternity never turned people away from our parties, so we sometimes had to worry about gang members wandering in. I actually met a former Latin king who was pretty cool. The school wouldn't provide security since it could be seen as them condoning underage drinking, so I suggested we hire this homeless guy I knew who was always at my go-to Munchies gas station because he had actually helped me out when I almost got mugged once, and knew a lot of the less than savory characters. We told him we just needed him to let us know if there was anyone he knew might cause a problem. Dude was more professional than most bouncers at the bars I've been to. He made everyone that wasn't obviously a student show their neck and wrists for gang tattoos and ran a tight goddamn ship. Our president ended up getting him a bouncer job at a club downtown. That's a little more my speed. Give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, yada yada yada. I'm sure you all know the saying. I was homeless for 4 years, 15 to 19. One day I applied for a security guard job at the local hospital for a joke. Was punkish at the time. When I showed up, I almost scared the guy off, but he shook it off and asked me to stay for the interview. For the first half hour, he asked me questions one would ask any applicant. After he finished, he looked at me and asked me my story. We sat and talked for close to 2 hours. I got my stuff and was preparing to leave when he came up to me and told me, "Cut your hair, take off the piercings, and be here on Wednesday. You look like a guy that could use a chance in life." I went back to my hole that night and thought things through. It was August 16th, 2001, and I've been off the streets ever since. Sometimes all we need in life is a chance to prove ourselves. That last bit rings so true, but it's such a shame because I've seen a lot of people squander that opportunity in turn or short-term satisfaction. I once picked up a hitchhiker that was trying to get from Washington to New Mexico when I was camping in Yellowstone. He had family in New Mexico that offered to help him and had a good job lined up. He just had to get there. So we packed him up and took him back to Colorado with us. He stayed on our couch for a week or two and picked up our mess and took care of maintenance I grossly neglected. My roommates and I were in college at the time and partied 3 to 4 days a week, so you can imagine the mess. The little money he would get from doing odd jobs for neighbors and such, he would buy food and beer for all of us. One day I had an errand to run about 50 miles closer to his destination, but still 300 plus miles from where he needed to be. He came with me, and when he got out of the car, handed me a letter and said, "Don't read it until I get home," then walked through a field straight towards the Rocky Mountains. When I got home, we all read the letter, and it was the kindest set of words I'd ever received. About a month later, we get a call from an area code I don't recognize. It was him. He made it and called us on his first payday at his new gig. He also told us about the remainder of his journey. Turns out he walked and camped a large portion of the way back. I have since moved multiple times and grown up a bit. He's still welcome back whenever he wants, though. I hope all is well, Freddy. Maybe it's because I watched the first half of Batman Begins till 2 in the morning the other night, but something about that just sounds so cool. He turned away, walked through a field towards the Rocky Mountains. Cool AF. We've hired hundreds of them over the last 20 years, mainly because I'm lazy and I can make more money with my time doing what I do. The only really memorable one was Tavion. Tavion stopped me in our parking lot one Friday morning and said he needed some work and he was willing to do whatever we had. Just the day before, I'd gotten a notice from the city saying the bamboo on our back backlot was getting out of hand, and we needed to get rid of it. It's a little over an acre, and if you've ever seen how bamboo grows, there were thousands of 20-foot stalks. Told him I'd give him $100 to do it. Gave him a machete and figured I'd never see him or the machete again. Over the course of the day, he cut every damn piece of the bamboo down and had them laid in a couple of huge piles. Paid him his money, thanked him, and told him I'd get my guys to haul it to the dump Monday. He asked me if he could have the big pieces first, and I gladly let him. Came back in Monday morning and he was back in the lot helping somebody load a monster-sized load of bamboo onto a trailer. He'd spend the weekend cutting all the branches off and trimming it into 6-foot-long sections and was selling them all for $350 to a local plant nursery he'd done day labor work for in the past. We talked about it for a few minutes after the truck left, and he just kept smiling and saying there was a hustle in everything, you just had to find it.
That is some real good advice from Tavion.
In Chile, my father and I parked in a sketchy neighborhood when we went to visit some family. Dad sees a homeless guy and gives him $5 and tells him to watch our car. Later, when we're walking back to our car, we see some guy trying to take our windshield wipers. My dad's about to yell something when our homeless guy comes running like a bum out of hell, punches the guy in the back of the head, and the guy runs off. Homeless dude chases after him, but my dad tells him to calm down. Dad gives him some extra cash and we have dinner with him. 10 out of 10 would hire again.
Well, technically your father hired him. Also, there's something strange about the possessive language in saying, our homeless guy.
I tried once, really just wanted my lawn mowed. Told the guy I'd cook him a meal if he mowed my lawn. All I got was an FU. He was literally holding a sign that said, we'll work for food. Maybe he really was just looking for money. Maybe because I was 19 at the time, he thought I was messing with him. I guess I'll never know. Unfortunate, but perhaps the man's been burnt too many times. Unsure if he was homeless, but a young man on a bike asked to paint the numbers on my curb for a donation. I was noticing that it was illegible just the other day, so made sense to have it done. He'd done my neighbor's house and it looked good enough, so I said yes. We chatted a bit. He said he'd been laid off and couldn't find work. I ended up giving him $10 for about 10 minutes of work. He did a really nice job. 2 cans of paint, a pack of number stencils, and his positive attitude was a good investment on his part. I well and truly hope things worked out for that guy. Sometimes when you fall on hard times, you might not have a glamorous backup plan or anything like that, but as long as you're making money, as long as you haven't given up and just decided to wallow in your failure, I'd say you still have a chance of picking yourself back up. My parents have a house in Florida they rent out. My dad was down there doing repairs to it when a homeless man on a bike stopped by and asked if my dad needed help. Dad decided to hire him. Alton, the homeless man, helped my dad repaint the house, mow the lawn, and cut out all the overgrown plants. When the house wasn't rented and my family was up north, my dad paid Alton to mow the yard and keep an eye on the place. While working with my dad, Alton asked my dad if he could borrow some money to buy some nice pants and shoes for an interview he had for a job. Dad wasn't sure he could trust him yet, so instead my dad took him out to a store and they went shopping together for these items. Alton got the job as a chef and eventually got himself a room in a house with some other guys. Occasionally, Alton will ask my dad for some emergency money and he always finds a way to pay it back. I find it interesting that my dad was so open to work with Alton due to him being both black and poor, those being 2 types of people my dad can say judgmental things about. Either way, I'm glad it all worked out for Alton. Words and the things people say can certainly give us a good insight into the thoughts and feelings of those around us, but at the end of the day, when an opportunity arises, it is the actions people take that they should be truly judged on. My family gave a man a job around our farm who was homeless. He stayed at a house on our property and worked on various jobs. He was a great guy and just made some mistakes by getting involved in illegal substances. He was a great worker and did a lot of good work. Eventually, sadly, his wife came back into his life and got him back on the junk. He pawned some of our equipment off and left. Either way, they can be great workers, but sometimes there are deeper problems that are reasons they are homeless in the first place. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for a betrayal, and this is a pretty damn bad betrayal. Pretty late to this, but hey, I feel good for what I did. I was a shift leader at a Hardee's, Carl's Jr. for you West Coast people, and it was perfectly located near where the homeless and all the skate kids hung out at. Both groups used to come in and harass everyone before I became a shift leader. Once I got to that point, instead of yelling and kicking them out, I decided to sit them down and ask what's going on. Come to find out, many of those teenagers and kids were either living in abusive homes or even homeless. I got the idea to keep the food people mess up and even using my manager meal to feed these poor more kids while I could. I became real close with many of them, and to this day keep up on all of them. One in particular used to be in and out of jail a lot. I promise him every time he comes out, I'll buy his first real food. Well, after a while I moved jobs and got him a job where I worked at. A few months later, helping him out with what I could, he got a place. His girlfriend, who was pregnant at the time, moved in, and they are doing great, and their baby is adorable. Being able to help and understand so many of those kids now really changed my view on so many kids and why they act the way they do. I really have nothing else to say except good job. A lot of these stories have been a lot more positive than I was expecting, and I have very little to say after a certain point. A homeless guy came by my house when I wasn't home and asked my roommate if he could pick up the sticks in the yard. My roommate gave him some money and the guy left without doing anything. A few weeks later, the guy came by when I was home, but my roommate was out. He started telling me I owed him money for cleaning up my yard. I had never seen him before, so I told him to get the hell off my property before I busted his head open. He left and then came back, broke into my house a few days later and stole a guitar I'd had since I was a kid. Heartwarming? No. Well, great googly moogly, is the latter half of the video going to be about how people shouldn't be too naive? I hired a homeless guy years ago when I was a construction superintendent building condos, Frank. He was a super hard worker, always showed up on time, usually before me, waiting at the job site. Frank was a former high school football star and was ridiculously strong, so anything that required brute force was Frank's domain. He also already had a lot of construction experience, so he didn't need to be supervised very much. I got to like Frank a lot. Everyone did. He was a very emotional and passionate guy. He had no problem crying, even at an inappropriate time. But that's what we loved about him. He was just very genuine. But like many homeless people, sadly, he had a drinking problem, and I suspect some illegal substance problems as well. I never knew for sure. I knew he was a drunk, though. I also didn't really care because, like I said, he showed up for work on time and he kicked butt at it. Anyway, since I was young and naive at the time, I took a big chance on Frank. I bought him an old pickup truck for $2,500. He had recently roomed up with this Jamaican guy who seemed okay and had a place to stay. So I figured if I gave him a truck, it might be enough to push-start him into a stable life. He had no driver's license, so I told him we would work to get that taken care of, but only Jamaica could drive for now. He called his Jamaican roommate Jamaica. Well, a week later, he gets arrested for driving without a license and the car gets impounded. I was furious. I cussed him out. He cried. I paid to get the truck out of the impound lot and gave it to another friend who needed a car, and he basically did the same crap. Didn't get his license, didn't take care of legal issues he had, so let the truck just sit at his house for 6 months. I eventually just sold the truck on Craigslist. Interestingly, I ran into Frank a few years ago, and he told me he was taking classes in community college and has a place to stay, so I was happy to hear that. But the lesson is, don't be naive. I hope Frank's doing okay, but you can get burned by being too nice. Some people just aren't ready to fix their own lives, and you can't force it. Yep, that last little bit, literally the most important part. I know it seems like I'm being a pessimistic little B-word, but remember that. No joke, I hired a guy to help clean our house barn. He showed up every day and worked his butt off for months. I noticed this guy had old beaten up glasses and looked like they were 4 inches thick, and when he took them off, he was absurdly blind. I asked him when he had last seen an eye doctor, and it had been over 2 decades. I told him if he continued to save his money for a future studio apartment, I would buy him new glasses. The day finally came when he had saved $1,000, and I honored my word and bought him some new glasses, and it came out to about $400, and he literally started crying when he first put them on because he could see so much better. A few months after that, money started disappearing from the office. This barn was easy to break into if you were skinny because you could slide in under the metal gate just barely enough to get inside. After working with the police, we set up a floor mat that automatically calls the police when it's stepped on. That night, I showed up to the barn with all the police lights illuminating it. Inside the barn, unable to sneak back out of the crack under the metal gateway, was Leroy. When he was arrested, he was drunk and in possession of a pipe for smoking illegal substances. I saw him a few more times on the street, and it broke my heart. These are already getting quite depressing, but it does vary things up a little bit. I mentioned it earlier, but sometimes people give up long-term, real opportunities for work or even friendship in exchange for their baser, more quick relief habits. And if you ever find yourself in that situation, you've got to be able to make the decision on what is better for you and stick with it, as hard as it might be.
Once when I was a kid, my dad and I were parking on a moderately sketchy Manhattan street around 8 at night to go to a restaurant. At the time, my dad drove a Lincoln Navigator, and when he parked it, this homeless guy immediately started chatting him up the second we took a step onto the sidewalk. I remember him telling my dad that he'd watch his car for $20 and make sure nobody messed with it while we were eating. My dad gave him the $20, and while we were eating, I asked him why, and he told me because if I didn't give him the $20, he would have slashed my tires himself. When we got out, the dude was still standing there by the car, and well, it was fine. You know what, if that was his true intention, smart homeless man and even smarter father for knowing that that's probably his true intention. I was in my front yard and a man came up to me and asked if I had any work. He said he needed $9 so he could catch a bus to Tennessee to go live with his sister. He said he hadn't eaten in 3 days. He had caught his wife cheating and she threw him out on the streets. I had a couple small odd jobs and he did them. I gave him a bag of food, $20 and a story. Many years ago, after a train trip from Ohio to New York City, I realized I didn't have enough money to get home, to Connecticut. I was jokingly telling the couple that I had been sitting with on the train my woes. The man pulls out his wallet and hands me a $20 bill to tell me to pay it forward someday. The homeless man was in tears, gave me a hug, thanked me, and promised me he would. I hope he is okay. Well, at the end of the day, that's the best you can hope for, that in doing a good deed for someone, they'll keep that good deed in their heart and mind, remember it forever, and hopefully treat people as kindly as you treated them, or, at least maybe change their ways if maybe they weren't as good a person when you met them. This doesn't directly answer the question, but I thought I'd contribute. It's not really much about how good or bad the homeless guy was, but more about how he affected me. I'm not a very good storyteller, but if you want to read on, please do. I was never truly homeless, but I sort of put myself in a situation a few years back. But this is not a story about me, it's a story about my dear friend. We'll call him Sean. I have an advanced education and at the time had decent prospects of a job. I wanted to start my own business, so on a very big opportunity, I started a business, got a warehouse, office equipment, and all that. The promising line fell through, so I went to business plan B. Anyways, my ex is equally educated and stuff, but she didn't want to work to support me while I got my business taking off. Some other personal issues as well, but that is the gist of it. Anyways, we separated, and with a little bit of savings, I ended up living in the warehouse. I did get divorced eventually, since I was on plan B instead of money rolling in. I had to fight tooth and nail to make sales one by one. The business eventually grew and it wasn't doing that bad, but in the beginning it was a dark period of my life for many reasons. Divorce and being very poor was one thing, but one of my parents was diagnosed with an illness just before the split as well. Because of my immigration status, I couldn't really go to see her and I hadn't seen her in a few years. I used to think of some dark things every day for a long time, but a few things kept me going. Grit, determination, and I told myself I had to survive to go and see my parents again. But another thing was my friend Sean, my land manager, a really nice guy that put up with me living in an industrial neighborhood, hires guys in bad situations to help around here and there, ex-cons, homeless guys, etc. To be honest, from what I can tell, a bunch of them were pieces of crap, but not Sean. He lived in a warehouse on the other side of the street. I was in a bad shell where the only time I'd go out and meet other people was to get drunk. Sean helped me get out of this rut. Sean was much older than me, in his late 50s. I was in my mid-20s. He was a straight-up alcoholic. Sean moaned, was relatively sour, and kinda did bare minimum at work, but boy did he know how to fix things. I hired him to do some work around my shop. Even though I didn't really have much money, he always did a good job. He would come over unannounced or knock on my door when I was still sleeping at like 2 p.m. It was exactly sort of the intervention and interaction I needed. He'd tell me about his divorce and about how he was heartbroken, but how time passes and heals most wounds. He'd also tell me about his folks passing. When I was talking about my parent, he sucked at cooking and made really unhealthy stuff, but he'd always bring over food if he made some. Eventually, it got to the point where whenever I felt extremely bad, I'd go over and have a beer or two. Shoot the breeze, listen to his stories of his wild youth, look at some cool memorabilia he collected, pictures of old muscle cars, drag cars he worked on, etc. When it came to working on cars and motorcycles, I had a couple of clunkers. He just helped me for free. I tried to help back by helping him keep down his alcohol intake and listen to him vent when he wasn't drinking.
Of course, gave him jobs whenever I needed it and could afford to hire someone. Anyways, we came from extremely different backgrounds, especially since I was largely a kid who grew up in a good family who was pushed to get all the education I can get. Him, on the other hand, had just recently been homeless and living as a bum. In some strange ways, he became my best friend for that year. I grew the business but pulled myself out of the situation. It was no longer worth my time to hang on to this past dream and left for a job interview on a project that I'd get paid handsomely. On the way back, I called him back to check up on him and he told me he was just moaning about his pains again. The years had been very hard on his body and he didn't really take care of himself, so he was always complaining about one thing or another. I just made sure someone in the area knew about it and was checking in on him and didn't think much of that. Anyways, that was the last time I ever spoke to him. He passed away while I was making a cross-country drive back to the city. My good friend Sean came in and out of my life just as he had lived his life. I still kept this Christmas card he wrote me one year. It reminds me to be thankful, for he was there during the lowest points of my life. And to everyone else, you never know who will come in and out of your life to help you move on. That is absolutely the best and my favorite story on this topic. They cultivated a relationship, acknowledged each other's flaws, became friends, they trusted each other, had each other's back, talked about their issues and whatnot, and it's super tragic that his friend died, but at the end of the day, this dude, Sean, obviously left a really lasting, positive impression on him that gave him hope, and you know what? If you've got no hope for yourself, well, God, why not try and cultivate hope for other people? Teens, what is something important that you feel your parents should learn? Do not insist on comparing me to my friends. They do not act the same way in front of you as they might in their own home, and you have no clue how they act when they're at home with their own parents. Done up pretty strong, yeah. I may have heard that once or twice in my teen years. Just because one of my friends is a girl doesn't mean you have to constantly bring her up. What's the story behind that? Do they give you the whole, oh, why don't you take your friend Stephanie to prom? Stephanie's a nice girl. Privacy. My grandmother will come into my room while I'm sleeping just to look through my window above my head to see what the neighbors are doing. She looks above my head to peep at what I'm doing on my phone. She gets mad at me when I don't tell her an answer to a personal question she asks me. She is also untrustworthy and will lie to make a story more interesting so I can't tell her anything in fear she will spread a rumor that isn't true about me. I once told her how the gym teacher passed away from cancer, and she proceeded to call her friend and tell her my gym teacher dropped dead in front of us at the gym and cancer spilled out of her. If cancer could spill out of you, I wonder what it would look like. I bet everyone's like, I'd probably be like a black tarry substance and really smelly and stuff, but I'm picturing like the Nickelodeon slime. Get my attention before talking to me. They did get mad at me when I miss the first half of what they are saying, but it's because I'm already doing something. I don't mind pausing my game, putting down my book/phone, muting the TV, etc. Just say my name, or even, hey, you, before you start talking so I realize I'm supposed to engage. I think that just sounds like a lack of awareness of your surroundings. Like, I like to know who is in the room with me, what's going on, stuff like that at all times. So it's like, are they on the phone? No. Is there anyone else in the room with me? No. So they're obviously talking to me. It's only annoying when they then turn around and go, oh, I'm just talking to myself. You don't have to listen. I understand that compared to you, I shouldn't have any stress, but teen stress does exist. Maybe in the future I'll learn how naive I was and how small my stresses now are, but right now, what I'm stressed about matters to me. That's super valid, but I will say, yeah, being an adult kinda sucks. Enjoy being a teenager while you can. Don't stop me from hanging out with my friends and then later complain why am I always in my room and not outside enjoying life. That's just unfair. That does sound pretty dumb, but I don't know, it maybe depends on the kind of people that you're hanging out with. Doesn't mean you can't go out and enjoy life, it just means they don't want you to be hanging out with dodgy people. Like I said though, I don't know what the situation is behind this, I'm just trying to rationalize it to some degree. Communication through technology is still communication. I know it's not true for all people my parents' age, but a lot seem to be stuck on the idea that just because you're texting someone or messaging them online, it's somehow not real contact and not a real relationship with the other person. Does someone have an online girlfriend? That's the way they make it sound at the end, especially. While yes, you do pay for my tuition, car, clothing, food, etc., you need to give me some sense of control. Rules are important, I understand, but I need to learn how to function on my own. If you couldn't tell from my brother developing alcoholism the second he got to college, if you control your kids too hard in high school and then let them out into college, they don't know what to do with the freedom and go frickin' nuts. That is some solid parenting advice. That is so true. Don't snoop through my things. If I have a personal note to or from a friend or a piece of writing, don't look through it and read it, and don't send a picture of it to everyone else in the family. It's out of sight for a reason. People might disagree with me, but I kind of think that parents can snoop through their kids' stuff all they want. If they have a habit of doing it, just get better at hiding your stuff. Don't make fun of our relationships. Whenever they see me talking to a girl, they always ask, "Who's your new girlfriend?" They always ask me after school, "How's your girlfriend doing?" Even when they know I'm not in a relationship, or even right after I break up. I know they're not doing it to be mean, but it's little stuff like this that makes me hesitant to share my actual relationships with them. Just remember that this is sort of an awkward time for us, and relationships are no exception. I always try to take it in jest because I know they're kidding, but other people might take it as an insult. Or you pushing them to find a girlfriend/boyfriend when they are not ready. Also, just because I've been stressed or mopey doesn't mean I'm gay. It just means I don't feel like talking. I've had to explain twice to my parents that I am not a closeted homosexual. Just sounds like pretty basic parental banter to me, but if it's something that this guy's stressed out about, then yeah, fair enough. We're so dramatic because a lot of things are new. We can feel new levels of emotion. It might seem silly to cry over someone we've dated for less than a year, but this is literally the most heartbroken we've ever been. Our schoolwork is the hardest we have ever done. Our responsibilities are the most daunting. From our perspective, what seems trivial to you is new and terrifying and the most extreme it has ever been. I think I've been gauging this more on the general situation in that how relatable is this? I understand this is more of a personal thing, but I'm going to say this, parents are dealing with not as many for sure, but also new stressful situations, and it's not about being an adult or a teenager or something like that, because I've said it before. Adults don't have all the answers, and on the heartbreak thing, think about it like this. Yeah, your heart's broken, you like this girl a lot, but at least this girl isn't divorcing you, she's taken your money, your house, and your dog. She didn't even want the dog when you got the dog, but she certainly wants it now. My advice to anyone when they're in a dire state of mind or something is think about the situation, think about how much worse it could be and where you are as opposed to the worst it could be, and then just get on with your life, because guess what? All of these situations are bigger in your mind than they are in real life. Of course, then there are problems like paying the mortgage on time. That's a big problem. Our problems are real. My mom is really good at understanding this. She gets angry along with me when I mention how my best friend got hit by her boyfriend. She gives me advice when I say that my friends have depression. She gets worried when I'm quiet and easily angered. Not only does she empathize, she helps. She once dialed 911 for a friend who had attempted self-deletion while I told her how to apply first aid. She gave me permission to deck the abusive boyfriend. She lent me her old psychology textbook so that I could better help my friend with depression. She makes me feel comfortable enough to talk about whatever is bothering me. Most people on this thread give very good examples of what not to do. Let my mother be the model for what to do. I mean it every time I say that she is the best mom ever. Okay, now let's talk about my dad. He is every bit as awesome as my mom, just in different ways. He grew up as the oldest son in a ghetto in San Antonio. He was the first in my family to go to college. He's worked for the Air Force, has been a pastor, been a missionary, and is now a higher up at an energy savings firm. Because of him, I've always lived a comfortable life, but it does not stop there. He teaches me everything he knows. I remember him explaining his Excel spreadsheet in 5th grade. In middle school, he started giving me a large monthly allowance and told me to pay for basically everything but rent in order to teach me money management. I'll be honest, I talk more to my mom about emotional problems. She got her degree in psychology after all, but I can talk to my dad about literally anything else. Personal finances, politics, theology, current events, books, movies, anything that pops into my head, I can talk to my dad about. He taught me that even if you can't do masculine things like repair a car or assemble furniture, you can still be one of the greatest men out there. I've learned so much from him, and I learned more every day. I told him about this post and asked him if he had anything he wanted to share with the internet. He said, "When your mother and I first had your older brother, we decided that we would have 2 goals in parenting. That you would know that we love you unconditionally, and that you would know we are always there for you. Everything else we do flows out of those 2 goals." Yeah, he actually talks like that. It's awesome. If there are any parents or teens reading this, strive to be like my parents. I wouldn't trade them for anything. Sounds like you got a strong nuclear family right there. You got a mother and a father who are both experienced in their own personal areas of expertise that they use to then build you up into a more rounded person and tell you that they love you all the time. Brag much? Nah, this is good. This was a nice game changer. Yeah, that's how a family should be. You can't pause an online game! Oh, I feel the Lord in the house tonight. Testify, brother, testify! I hope you all appreciate the extra oomph I put into that one.
So many arguments about that stuff. Don't assume that teen life today is the same as teen life when you were in high school. If your teen doesn't have a history of stereotypical bad teen behavior, don't treat them like they do. Yeah, I agree with that. For one thing, I think a lot of modern kids probably have anxiety because their simplest mistakes or even their biggest mistakes can be immortalized on a phone then uploaded to the internet within a few minutes. On the latter part, I don't know. I see a lot of scummy behavior from kids that I very much doubt they exhibit in front of their parents. Naturally, that's a case-by-case basis, but there are definitely some kids in the world that are unbelievably entitled. If your child doesn't agree with your religious views, back off and let them think it through. Pushing harder isn't helping and will just make them less likely to return to your faith in the future. I hid my true faith from my parents and went along with their faith for years. My sister decided to come out about her views, and that's how I know I made the right choice. Yeah, just generally don't try and force your opinions on kids in general or anything because, they might turn around and decide that they hate you and all of your ideas. Currently 17 and I'm really into technology. I got a job at 15 because I wanted to build a computer and still hold it today. Anyway, the things I buy are mine. I did work for them and yet they still threaten to take them away from me if I act irritable. Being irritable is caused by depression, anxiety and other crap going on. The constant fighting with my sister that gets on my nerves. Yes, she's screaming, but screaming back will not make her stop. Please, for the love of God, don't downplay my issues. Yes, my girlfriend cheated. Yes, I'm a teenager and maybe it's not that big of an issue, but Christ, don't act like it doesn't affect me and how I act. I have to say, contrary to what I may say in any of these, I always take these stories with a slight pinch of salt. If anything, I wish I could hear the other sides of these things, because in this occasion I wonder, although this kid seems like they're an okay kid, job at 15 and everything like that, clearly has a sense of responsibility and whatnot, that's great. But the real question is here, are you being irritable or are you being insufferable? Just because I don't go out every day does not mean I have no friends. I talk to the same people online every day and see them in class 5 days a week. My parents think I'm antisocial and would get some friends if I go outside. In reality, I am more social when you let me stay in my room. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that. If you're just staying in all the time whenever you can, that's kind of bad for you. Catch some rays, the sun's great for you. Not in excess, of course. Nothing's good for you in excess. I know that I'm smart and I receive good grades. They just need to learn that I will never be the valedictorian or an honor roll kid or anyone they deem intelligent. I'm a little confused. Do your parents genuinely think you're stupid or do they simply think you are not living up to the potential that you have? Stop comparing us to your high school selves. Yes, Mom, I know you're a class president, prom queen, valedictorian, and captain of the cheer team, but I'm not you, so stop being disappointed and be proud of what my person can achieve. Well, this is just annoying because now I want to know what you can/have achieved. Asking your child to tell the truth about something, and then when they do, being mad at them about it. I would much rather prefer if when I told you the truth, you would thank me for being honest and lightening the punishment, if any. This isn't just for teenagers, though. My younger sister, who is 4, gets into trouble sometimes, and when my mother asks her about it and she tells the truth, she gets very mad at her. So now whenever she asks her to tell the truth, she just lies about it. Makes me sad. Well, that makes me sad too, because you know what? When you're telling a child to tell the truth, you need to be a little more gentle about it. Yeah, they told the truth. They were brave. You don't have to reward them or anything. You just have to be cool about it. You can tell them you're disappointed. You can tell them you're upset. You just gotta be cool. I do not have a goddamn time turner. I cannot clean my room, take a shower, do all my homework, feed the cat, clean the litter box, and put together my Halloween costume in 1 hour. I hang out with older people. I'm 15. I mostly hang out with 18 to 20-year-olds I meet through activism/environmentalism, volunteer leadership stuff because the conversations are more intellectually stimulating. There's no dumb drama. They're inspiring people that I look up to a lot. Networking is easier and I've opened up amazing opportunities for myself, and frankly, I just enjoy being with them more than anybody else my age. No, we don't go off and drink booze. No, they're not peer pressuring me into having sex. No, we're not doing illegal substances. They're just nicer people. I know you think 15 is way too young to be doing traveling programs and internships, but I have plans and goals in mind for the future, and as much as I'd like to be your little girl forever, you need to let me grow up and start exploring my options. I don't understand why you can't just be happy that I'm eager about post-sex stuff already like any other parent would. Volunteering and doing environmental work isn't a waste of time. I'm networking in areas that might be useful in the future. I'm making friends that I actually like. I'm building essential skills like public speaking and fundraising amazing. I'm making a name for myself. I'm enjoying myself and I'm giving back to the community. Please stop threatening to take away my volunteer work as punishment.
Sounds like they're pretty happy doing what they're doing, so I don't understand why they don't just let them. Just, make sure that you remain to be a solid part of their life, give them support and love and stuff like that, and make sure that none of their 20-plus-year-old friends are just waiting for them to turn 18. It might be legal, but I'd still say it's grounds for grooming. Probably too late, but this one bugs the hell out of me. It isn't the 70s and 80s anymore. Yes, we understand that you didn't use your TVs barely at all. You rode your bikes and played basketball, etc., etc. And yes, we understand it's good for us to be active, but we live in a different generation. The generation before them married young, didn't have all the extra time due to technological advances that makes life easier and so on. Things change, and yet parents still parent like they wish they had been 30 years ago. I love my parents to death, but that's my biggest pet peeve with them. That's a conversation I have fairly frequently. I mean, it's weird to think that a couple hundred years ago, you'd have until maybe you were 30 or something like that, and that would be considered a full life, maybe for good reason. Lord knows it sucks to get so old that you literally cannot do anything for yourself. But I think as a result, with modern technology, medicine, and all that stuff, we have a generation of people that just kind of stay as teenagers for a lot longer than they probably should. That ain't me judging or anything like that, but, always keep in mind that you should really get your life on track. Learn to use a computer. Oh god, I super get this one. I think my mother only learned how to use a computer, or, she uses a tablet really, about 5 or so years ago. What's really annoying is that she still doesn't know how to copy and paste. Because I said so is a crappy reason. Depends on what they're asking you to do. It's not weird for a Hispanic truck driver to deliver to the Hong Kong market. Ah, yes, the immortal rivalry of the Chinese and the Mexicans. Your favoritism towards my sister devastates me. I mean, how can they help it? She's so much cooler than you. I kid. Favoritism, at least really, really blatant favoritism that results in, neglect is really awful.
Parents commenting on how I spend my money. I only spend about 20% of what I make on things I frickin' want that I now have to hide. This is how my closet under my bed is now full of Magic the Gathering cards. If they only knew how much I spent.
I don't know, card games are kind of a money sink. I mean, you get into them and then you gotta keep up with expansions that introduce new mechanics into the game, because then your old decks are kind of obsolete based around the new hotness of the game. I play Digimon, the card game, sometimes. I haven't bought any for ages because I just look at how many I have and go, ugh, and then I've missed expansions and I don't really want to get into new expansions. It's a whole thing. Don't get into card games unless you are acutely aware that you are probably going to spend a lot of money if you're really getting into them. You shouldn't try to tell your kids what choices to make for things like college or uni. Sure, you can help them, but don't try to tell them to do something that they don't want to do. Well then please, just don't choose a topic that's utterly useless in the real world and won't make you any money, and then complain and moan that everyone else should pay for your education. That might sound critical of me, but with the power of the internet, you can honestly learn all of these things that you could at university for free. Which is why my position on college and university learning personally is that you should take a few years off, do things, live your life, figure out what you actually want to do and what you enjoy doing, and then go to university with the knowledge of what you want to do and that you love doing is worth pursuing and paying for. But hey, I'm just a disappointed voice on the internet that as of yet hasn't gone to university, so what does my opinion matter? Do not tell your children if they were gay you would not go to the wedding. It's like saying that if I don't fit your mold, I'm not worthy of your love. It's also setting yourself up for years of distrust. I want to be open and I want them to be a part of my life so badly, but if they knew anything, even suspected anything, they wouldn't want to be a part of mine. The job of a parent is to guide, discipline, and love unconditionally. You can't change how your kid came out, but you can still love them. My parents should learn that if I could be different, I would be. If I could change myself, I could be their definition of normal. I would be. My parents should learn that my wildest dream is for them to love me for exactly who I am, just as much as I love them. I totally agree with the general message here, gay teens getting kicked out of homes. It's real freaking hard on them, being left out in the elements and no one to love them and stuff, and usually falling into bad habits or with people that take advantage of their emotional state. But I do believe that there are limits to unconditional love. For example, killing someone in cold blood, being a kitty fiddler. Just two examples of things that I would personally disown anyone for. But just being, not exactly set to the mold that people expect of you. It's complete bullcrap when people disown you for that. Stop thinking you know everything. I can't get over this. Whenever my mom and I are doing something that involves modern technology, she just takes over like she knows everything and messes it up. I know what to do and try to tell her calmly, but she doesn't listen and sends everything to hell. 2. Whatever people say or write is not me. Whenever my mom goes through my things, she sees what other people have wrote and accuses me of writing them. She then tells me to tell her the truth, which I do, and I will still get accused of lying. Privacy is real. You were a teenager and I am a teenager. I go through a lot and the least I can get is some privacy. I can go on Google and search for something and she'll come into my room and start reading what I'm typing out loud or stand behind me watching what I'm doing. She'll also go through my phone, which is annoying. I just log out of my stuff now. 4. Stop calling me every 5 minutes. School is long, hard, and tiring and I get frustrated. I go home and try to relax before chores. Mom comes home and starts calling me 24/7 over little things. One day I actually just stood leaning on the wall waiting for her to call me, so I didn't get comfortable. 5. Let me go places without you. I can't even go to a school football game without my mom saying I'm not going by myself. Then she complains why I'm always indoors. My mom also makes me do other irritating stuff which I don't follow anyway, like reading 2 to 4 chapters of the Bible before going on the iPhone, iPad, computer, TV, or playing games, GTA 5, Mortal Kombat X, etc. Limits on all devices.
Well, I say, son, they don't sound like wholesome Christian games. I say, you gotta play yourself some Yakuza.
Oh man, that just hit me. Mortal Kombat X was the last Mortal Kombat game I bought. Is it that old now? It's almost 10 years old, goddamn. I would say to them the American dream idea is dead at this point in time. You could work hard and go to the right schools and have it still not pan out later in life. Half of the kids graduating higher education levels are having trouble finding jobs. So get off this idea that hard work leads to success, because it just is not true at this point in time. I see where this person is coming from a sense that I see a lot of things nowadays where, depending on what your sense of success is, whether it be followers or money or whatever like that, people do stupid, inconsequential stuff, and for some reason it brings them success. But guess what? Things might not work out the way that you wanted them to if you applied loads of hard work in school or on a topic or cultivating knowledge that you wanted because you thought, yeah, this will make me successful. But you know what? Life doesn't work like that. You now have the knowledge to do something, and you need to keep on striving and looking for the opportunities that you can get to apply that knowledge and those skills that you have cultivated yourself. It might take time before you can actually apply those things in a way that you deem makes you successful or content with life or whatever, but please, for the love of God, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on working hard and working towards your dreams. Forensic scientists, what is the most WTF case that you ever had? A friend of mine is a CSI, and I don't know if he's posted here, but just in case he hasn't, I'll put this here. Anchorage, Alaska, 2008. A 27-year-old woman hasn't paid her rent in 4 months. The landlord gave her a bit of a reprieve because he knew she was very poor and she was in a low-income housing. But after 4 months of zero contact, enough is enough, and he calls the cops to get into her place and either see her to talk or change the locks and remove her stuff to a storage shed so the apartment can be released to someone else. The cops find the front door to be bolted and use the landlord's key to get in, then find the woman dead in her shower, just sort of slumped as if she fell against the wall and slid down. The water wasn't on, and as this is Alaska and in the winter, the water is never shut off by the city because if hot water isn't moving through the pipes, they freeze and burst. The fact that her shower is off means she never turned it on or someone turned it off. The body is taken to the morgue and autopsied at the family's request because no obvious means of death can be found. As far as the examination could conclude, she died from an adrenal surge causing her heart to stop, more commonly known as frightened to death, which yes, can actually happen in some rare cases. The body was old, but no test showed any residual illegal substances in her system. None were found in the apartment, nor was there any sign of anyone having entered or left before the cops. The young, pretty average health woman appears to have gotten into her shower, and then her heart stopped due to terror. As far as I know, that's where the story ends. No substantial evidence. When I was pretty young, I got into all of like the procedural crime shows and stuff like CSI, Law and Order, just all those things, so I'm kind of interested in this topic. A friend of mine is a forensic scientist and her department dealt with burglary cases only, usually generating pretty uninteresting stuff to tell people. But her only good story is that once she got a pair of gloves found at a crime scene. She went to examine them and felt that there was something hard inside. She turned the gloves up to get it out and out falls a thumb, ripped off at the first joint. Apparently this particular burglar was holding up a safe while his mate gate went underneath it, dropped the safe on his hand, ripped his hand out and ran. They obviously caught the guy. The only interesting story they have, kind of rude, but I wonder if whoever caught them was like, so, was it worth it?
A friend is a psychologist whose previous life was in crime scene photography. She went to the scene of a self-deletion in a garage. This guy had a project car that he worked on his whole life. When he decided to end it all, he wanted to go with the car. So he shut the garage and turned on the engine and waited. To top it off, he had taken a bunch of pain and sleeping pills. When my friend got there, it was a good while after his death. EMTs and other specialists were there looking for details and whatnot. He was the VP of a fairly large chain of local businesses, so there was an insurance settlement to consider. My friend is in the middle of photographing the scene and the guy was laying there, pronounced dead hours ago, and he suddenly just shook hard. She thought it was a death rattle, so she kept taking pictures. Eventually, the guy sat up and nodded, and the EMTs were called back in to stabilize him and eventually save him. Apparently, the car had run out of gas right at the moment he went out, and he was pronounced dead on the scene. He couldn't talk or do much, but he had actually survived.
I don't know what the laws are in Alaska. I was gonna say he was lucky, but then I thought about the fact that he's probably being arrested for attempting self-deletion.
Forensic chemist here who occasionally gets called out to crime scenes just to consult on evidence collection. On the first one I ever went on, a father had killed his adult son and put the body in a deep freeze that was in his bedroom. There were a ton of cops and the other people from our lab there, but when the coroner asked for help removing the body from the freezer, I volunteered quickly, as I had never been that close to a dead body, other than funerals, and was curious. As I helped the coroner lift the body out of the freezer, which still had a bunch of food in it too, a pack of frozen biscuits was stuck to his body. I had to pry them off of him, which was both very weird and kind of funny at the same time. I often ponder, like so many other people do, what my final moments will define me as in the face of those who know and love me, as well as strangers who may be there to witness my downfall or whatever. And you know, there are people who obviously you know and care about, who love you, but that will remember you fondly, and then there are people like this who are just like, oh yeah, that guy who got biscuits stuck to him. Tragic story though. EMT here, we had a guy who was naked, bloodied, and tortured, then left outside in -10-degree weather until he froze. We found him literally frozen maybe a day after the fact. Now, my question is, how the hell do you move a 230-pound popsicle without breaking it?
Very, very carefully, I imagine?
I interned at the office of the chief medical examiner when I was 18, saw a lot of interesting stuff, learned a lot of interesting things. One case stuck with me more than the rest. I arrived one morning, went down to the basement where bodies were laid out for rounds every morning. On tables lay the usual, a couple of folks who died in the hospital and needed a partial autopsy to sign off on a death certificate, an illegal substance overdose, an illegal substance murder. Then, on one table, there was a blue Tupperware bin, a big one, about 3 by 3 by 2. It was filled with concrete, and out of the edges a little plastic wrap was lining between the concrete and the bin. And then, out of the top of the concrete, a couple of toes were poking out. The story was, out in the country, a family saw a small fire in the woods outside of their house. They called the fire department, and after putting out the flames, they found this bin. When we cracked the bin open, we found half of a man, about from the belly button down. Someone had thought the best way to dispose of this body would be to cut it in half, wrap it in plastic, put it in a Tupperware bin, fill the bin with concrete, and set it on fire. What they had really done was essentially cook the body in an oven with the plastic wrap acting as a roasting bag. Skin was sloughing off of the legs and feet, and the skin was discolored by this time, a nice green. Though this was about 10 years ago, I still distinctly remember being able to make out saw marks on the top edge of this half, however. Notes were taken and no signs of death were found on the legs and no indication of the person's identity either. Unfortunately, my internship ended a few weeks before they found the top half, so I never got to learn more about the case, but the image still certainly sticks with me till now.
I once considered doing an internship at a morgue myself, but you know what? Some of the things you'd see in there would probably just, like they said, stick with you for the rest of your life, or at least a really long time. I'm not a forensic scientist, but did forensic anthropology as part of my degree. When handling a ribcage, a ton of flakes came off and ended up lodged in my mouth, nose, and eyes thanks to a friend.
Yummy, flaky ribcage bits. Forensic genetic in Mexico. I've seen some serious stuff. I was assigned to the identification of mass graves, over 300 bodies, dismembered, scattered, and burnt. It was just one site. We had many. I'm gonna presume that's the work of the cartels. Stepfather used to be a police officer and loves telling stories about crime scenes. He went on to tell us about how after a motorcycle rider was struck by a train, he went under the wheel. His torso was found about 30 feet from his legs. They were connected by an intestine, so he picked up one end of the intestine and started to wrap it up like a rope. I defer back to the young man who had frozen biscuits stuck to his dead body. Just imagine that. You're dead on the floor and some guy's just wrapping up your intestines like he's putting away the garden hose. It's a rather surreal thought. My cousin is a coroner, and the worst was he came to get a body in a trailer during the summer. Man had been dead at least a week and it burst. He said the smell was the worst of his life. He and the other guys were up to their ankles in fluids and had to throw out his clothes and shoes. His boss felt so bad that he bought them each a new pair of like $300 shoes. I was literally watching Seven last night. It's a film with young Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. Do not recommend it for the faint of heart. And that's what I'm picturing. Like the crime scenes in it are super gritty and horrible. Like you would not want to be there. And that's what I'm imagining this trailer as. Not me, but there was a great case that I can't currently find on Google. I hope it was true. A woman was found dead in her bed with blood everywhere, and I mean everywhere. There were wine glasses or drinking glasses throughout the house with blood in them. I think blood may have been smeared about as well. So the investigators assumed some bizarre ritual, a gang of people, the whole 9 yards. Long story short, she had some strange clotting problems and was bleeding out of her mouth for an extended period of time. She probably got hazy from the loss of blood and was just trying not to make a mess in her house, so she kept spitting the blood in glasses. Eventually, she was overcome and died in her bed. I only hope it was true because I don't want to propagate lies. I was about to say out of context the whole "I hope it's true" is a bit weird. I did an internship at a PD one year. I got to be with a forensic team for a week. I got to see the aftermath of what a stabbing looks like. A 113 stab wound aftermath. Yes, 113 is correct. Unreal amounts of blood. I used a kitchen knife. Upon first inspection, it appeared like a dozen because there was so much blood on the body they couldn't tell how many there actually was. Gruesome. I actually personally know someone who was almost decapitated in a similarly excessive and brutal way. They survived and they were a very nice person. They moved away a good long while ago and, well, I hope they're doing well. I regularly post on Unsolved Mysteries, so I thought this was fitting here. One of the best cases on Forensic Files was a cold case that had gone unsolved for decades. A man told police he had picked up a hitchhiker in the evening. After the man and the hitchhiker got into a fight, the man threw him out of his car 2 miles away from his mother's house on a busy highway. The man later came home to his mother's house only to find the hitchhiker at his mother's house. He left to go call the police from a payphone. This was before cell phones. The police found his mother dead in bed. The man was a beneficiary of a huge life insurance policy and was the prime suspect. The cops or anyone did not believe the man's story. It was inconceivable that the hitchhiker, who did not know where the mother's house was, could make a 2-mile journey which turns in a neighborhood to just randomly break in and kill the man's mother who he didn't know. But there was blood at the scene and a palm print on the staircase that was not the man's nor the mother's. After some investigation, people at Hardee's did confirm that there was a man that fit the description looking to hitchhike. Still, they just assumed the man had paid the other man to kill his mother. 15 years later, after the invention of CODIS, the DNA was matched to a career criminal who definitely matched the description of the hitchhiker. After bringing him in and interrogating him, the killer had no idea he had killed the mother of the man who gave him a ride. He simply walked through this neighborhood looking for a house that looked empty, and his mother's was the only one without the lights on. It's baffling. It also sounds like just plain awful luck. I was at a regional medical center in rural Guatemala when we had a case come in from an RTA, road traffic accident, involving a pedestrian and a chicken bus. For those who don't know, a popular but incredibly dangerous form of public transport are retired American school buses that have been painted all sorts of vibrant colors, but underneath, the mechanics are shot to hell. Anyway, this pedestrian had been hit by one of these rolling death traps, which was fully loaded going around 80 miles per hour, and ended up getting wrapped under the front right wheel arch and completely mangled beyond recognition. They found bits of this guy spread 2 kilometers down the road, and the initial impact had split his torso down the middle and basically turned him inside out. When all the bits had been collected, the height of the body bag was around 2 inches, so you can imagine the state of the remains. Passers-by helped us pick up bits from the side of the road, but dogs and cats ran off with a fair amount of the smaller bits. Guatemala is a cool place. First of all, I also never heard of a chicken bus. I assumed it was literally that, a bus for chickens to be transported to wherever chickens need be. Second of all, my God, he was bloody... there's barely anything left of him if that's the case. Not a forensic scientist, but I majored in anthropology, with a focus on forensic anthropology. Given that, I was a fairly regular reader of the Forensic Science Quarterly. Here are a couple that I remember. Kid found on top of an elevator in a 6-story dorm. Apparently, he was elevator surfing, which is just as dumb as it sounds. He somehow got his head caught in the cables and got it twisted around a couple of times. This did not immediately kill him. He died from asphyxiation, which means he had anywhere from 30 to a couple of minutes to contemplate what had happened to him before he lost consciousness. Another one was sort of a mystery case. Headless corpse found in a truck in a national park. No head was to be found in the immediate area. Truck was turned on but had run out of gas. The wound was very clean, no sawing, almost like a guillotine cut. The investigating authorities were rather confused, but eventually they found a receipt in his pocket for 50 yards of nylon rope. They widened the investigation and eventually found the rope tied to a tree with a noose at the end. Further searching of this area eventually turned up the head. Pretty unique method of self-deletion. Mystery solved. This one isn't from the magazine, but a story personally relayed to me from the officer involved. A call comes in for a 50-ish black woman dead in a garage. Investigation reveals it is actually a 35-year-old white male. Dude put on a dress, rigged a noose to his garage door opener, and proceeded to watch some smut in his garage while choking himself with the garage door opener. Battery in the remote died, and then so did he. I am reminded of an episode of BoJack Horseman. I had a professor who was an expert in osteology and would train radiologists and doctors to recognize defensive fractures in arm bones. Defending yourself from an attack can leave a very distinctive spiral fracture on your forearm, and in his years of research, he'd never encountered that specific fracture pattern anywhere except in a defensive wound. Until he was attending a seminar at the University of Toronto in February, and when leaving the lecture, he was walking down an outdoor flight of stairs when someone called out to him to ask a question. He had his hands in his pockets because he wasn't wearing gloves, turned, slipped, and fell while perpendicular to the steps. His forearm hit the step and resulted in the exact spiral fracture he'd never seen anywhere else. And best part is that the radiologist that examined him was someone he himself trained to look for this sort of fracture as a warning sign for domestic violence. I'm picturing the dude who fell goes in, his student or former student, the radiologist examines him and is like, "Sir, has your wife been hitting you?" A bit late, but this is my area, so why not go for it? I'm in third year as a forensic anthropology student, so I don't have my own cases yet, but I've studied hundreds and have been told about some. My professor in advanced forensic methods was one of the leads in the case of Anthony Hardy, who basically killed people, dismembered them, and put their body parts in bins that were eventually found by a homeless guy. Another one she worked on, actually all I'm going to list were ones she was involved with, involved a man who went to park his car in his garage as he normally did, but his wife's car was in the spot. She refused to move it, so naturally, he stabbed her about 17 times, put her in his boot, and drove off. He explained the bloodstains away as being animal blood of something he'd hit, carried home in his boot, and cut it up on the garage floor. Obviously, this was a crap excuse, as simple blood testing showed it was human. She ran us through the forensics involved in that case, and it was quality stuff. One was a man found with his wrists and throat cut sitting on the floor of his living room. Depressed old man. Self-deletion, right? Wrong. The cut to his throat stopped halfway across and was at an unusual angle. The stopping halfway through is a good sign of holding someone from behind, reaching around and slitting the throat. Stopping halfway is in that position, it's much harder to fight a struggle. Also, the wrist wound had very little blood and was evidently done after the throat slit. The way he was sat showed that it was likely a loved one, as his body was taken care of, as strange as that sounds, and placed in a loving position. Possibly the weirdest one, a woman was found dead in the hole at the bottom of the stairs with blunt force trauma to the skull. There was a large hole in the ceiling above her, and the situation told to the forensic team by the police is that she fell through the loft. In the loft, no boxes were moved, and there were loads around the site of the hole. If she fell, she would have grabbed out, right? More damning, it was clear, by some sawdust and the state of the slats, that someone had used a saw to cut through the wood. Also, the blood splatter on the wall was all wrong. Basically, what had happened was that her husband had smashed her head in, put her at the bottom of the stairs, cut a hole in the loft, called the police, and told them of the accident. He also tried to kill the family liaison officer in the kitchen when the police were there after he realized the jig was up.
Seen a lot more stuff than that. Self-deletions that look like murders but no evidence found, vice versa, bodies found in burnt buildings, bodies found in swamps or moors from years back, terrible labs for the production of illegal substances, even got sort of taught how to make illegal substances actually, mass graves, photos, grapes, murder victims, it's pretty grim at times. I'm just picturing the dude who left his wife at the bottom of the stairs and everything thinking, oh yeah, I'm smart, I'm real smart, I'm like a Columbo villain. From a family friend, people who do lots of yoga involving rolling their heads around the axis of their neck, over time it wears away the corners of the vertebrae, which is why you're not supposed to do it. He saw a few cases of people getting into relatively minor car crashes. What should have been a nasty case of whiplash instead becomes fatal, as their spine was weakened and can't stop the momentum of their head. So it just pops right off of the spinal column. The head doesn't fly away or anything, it's still held on by muscle, but the driver is just as dead. I gotta be honest, through all of the violent descriptions of the things that happen to people in this, I'm just getting a blast of the X-rays from Mortal Kombat or something of whatever I'm describing. It's crazy. I'm not even a Mortal Kombat fan. I'm more of a Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue guy. Hell, if you catch me in the right mood, I might want to play Dead or Alive more than friggin' Mortal Kombat. An ex-journalist once told me the story that got him out of journalism. He covered a story where there was a house fire. Police suspected arson. Then they discovered the body of a young girl in the house. It was not the owner's, but a local girl whose mom was a junkie. Turned out that the mother was pimping her daughter out to the owner. Some local residents knew he was a nonce and set fire to his house, killing him and the girl. That's just sad. I mean, I don't give a crap what happens to a nonce, but the kid, oh man. I am a wound researcher, currently specializing in genetic changes along wound healing phases. Forensics does a lot of research into this, as the progression of a wound reveals a lot about time of death, conditions, etc. Prior to this, I had worked with cadavers and stuff, majored in neuropsych, premed roots, so lots of bloody stuff. I thought that I had a low squeamish index, as I see most stuff as a part of life. Holy crap, these studies I am reviewing right now. Apparently, a lot of people have massive chronic wounds that go untreated for a long time because they're diabetic, and A, don't have the proper vasculature for proper nociceptor function, and B, don't care enough about their bodies. So forensics can help differentiate whether a wound existed prior to death or not, and studies also look at different subpopulations to show wound progression in general, and some studies show graphic pictures to depict this. Seeing a morbidly obese man's leg split open like a wilted banana peel put me off work for a day. I couldn't crop the picture out and I scrapped the paper from consideration because the images comparing injury progression and chronic wound changes post-death were full of the most messed up diabetic wounds. I get that it's not a grisly murder, but I can handle that sort of stuff. I feel empathy for combat wound research I cover, and I don't recoil from any of those cases. Pressure ulcers don't flinch me. But diabetic wounds? I need to get back into brains. I checked some of the examples of wounds that this individual talked about, and yeah, they're all pretty gross. And yeah, the diabetic wounds are pretty damn bad.
Worked a burglary one time where a homeowner left in the morning and came back to discover their house had been broken into during the day. Normal things were stolen, electronics, cash, jewelry, etc. But what was left behind is a head scratcher. The burglar took a dump on the toilet seat cover and then covered it nearly with a towel. The victim wanted it collected for DNA processing. Nope. Forensics swabbed it and left it for the homeowners to handle. I gave them some latex gloves and wished them luck. Full disclosure, I'm a cop, not forensics. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.